Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the September 13th meeting of the Board of Selectmen, or the Select Board, sorry. And I would like to ask everybody to rise for the national anthem.
The Pledge of Allegiance.
The Pledge of Allegiance, sorry. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Neil will now sing the national anthem.
Okay, so our first item of business tonight is to swear in Matt Davis as our new lieutenant. And I will pass it over to our chief.
I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I want to thank the Select Board Chair, Laura Bates, and the rest of the board members, as well as Manager Rodriguez, for allowing us to come here tonight to officially swear in Matt Davis as a lieutenant for the North Andover Fire Department. Matt joined the fire department in 2003. He served mostly as a member of the famed Unit 3 under former Chief Bill McCarthy. He served as a public education instructor in the schools, as well as serving as an instructor of fire safety for the elderly population of North Andover. Matt was appointed lieutenant in July of this year and finally came over to Unit 2 with my promotion to chief. Matt's family is no stranger to public safety, as his dad served as a police department for over 30 years, retiring in 2017. Matt's brother Mike joined the police department in 1998 and serves as a lieutenant still. At this time, I'd like to ask Town Clerk Dawn Warren to come forward and officially swear Matt in to the rank of lieutenant for the North Andover Fire Department.
I state your name.
I, Matthew Davis,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform
discharge and perform
all the duties incumbent on me
all the duties incumbent on me
as a lieutenant
as a lieutenant
for the North Andover
for the North Andover
Fire Department,
Fire Department,
in accordance to the bylaws
in accordance to the bylaws
of the town of North Andover
of the town of North Andover
and the laws of the Commonwealth.
and the laws of the Commonwealth. That was easy.
I'd like to call Matt's daughters to come up, put his lieutenant's pin on, badge on him. And then we'll all help him up afterwards.
We asked for a speech, but we know you'd give one, so.
You want me to talk? Thank you all for having me. Thank you guys and gal for coming and supporting me. Thanking my wife and my daughters, my in-laws, my sister, my mom. And I love this town and look forward to serving it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Lieutenant.
Thank you.
We know this comes from your hard work and your dedication and your leadership that you show the North Andover Fire Department and our entire town. So
Thank you.
congratulations. Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
We want to get a picture.
Yeah, you want to do a picture?
With all the guys in it? Matt, you want to come back here or we'll get on? Save me a spot. Crowd in. Great. I'll save you a spot. I don't know. Where are you putting it in, Matt?
I'll go right in the middle. Somebody has to walk this stomach. They're perfect.
Yeah, don't try to get in. Get in close.
Come on, everyone.
Smile.
Smile big. Smile big. Smile.
Good.
Great.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So next we would like to recognize one of our citizens, Rosemary Vargas, for alerting some residents about a fire and them, as a result, safely leaving and getting out of the fire and the situation. And I believe the chief is going to tell us the story.
I'm going to defer this to Lieutenant Jeff Crosby. He was a fire investigator, and he was also the incident commander, first on scene at that fire.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm real happy that I'm here tonight, able to give this letter of commendation to Ms. Vargas and her family. A little backstory on this. So in the early morning of August 10th, 2021, Ms. Vargas was being driven home by her family after being discharged from the hospital, approximately around 4:30 in the morning. As they were coming up Union Street, they observed a fire on the back porch of 66 Union Street, the home to the Dufresne family. They began beeping their horn to alert them because they were sleeping. They were able to bang on the door, and she called 911, subsequently starting our response to the scene. Upon our arrival, Lieutenant Mencia on Engine 1 and myself on the ladder, we ended up finding a fire on the back porch of the residence that was starting to make entry into the back part of the house. Without her swift actions of both her and her family that night, we believe that this could be a lot different. The end result might have been a lot different. So on behalf of the North Andover Fire Department, we would like to present you with a letter of recognition for your job well done that night. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we have a certificate of commendation from the Select Board. So it just says that for your exemplary actions on August 10th, 2021, at which time you alerted sleeping residents of a fire on the back porch of 66 Union and called 911. Your swift actions saved the lives of the occupants and allowed the fire department to respond and extinguish the fire before it moved further into the house. The North Andover Select Board commends you for your life-saving response and effort in assisting a person in distress. And thank you on behalf of the town and its residents.
Thank you.
Thank you again for your service. And I believe the last item with the fire department is we have some surplus equipment that we're going to take out of order. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yes.
that is item H. 7H. You did. So Chief Weir is requesting to surplus a 2008 Chevy 4500 ambulance and to donate that to Rehab 5, which is a nonprofit organization that helps the town during fires. They are volunteers and they respond all throughout the North Shore.
Sounds like a good use of the ambulance, and now that we have the new one in service, and we have an extra one, and sounds like it's going to extend its life and continue to help folks. So sounds like a good use.
I would move approval.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Just so everyone knows, we have 5 volunteer organization that provides fireground rehabilitation for us. On hot days, they bring out cold drinks. In the middle of winter, they bring out a place for us to get out of the elements momentarily, warm drinks. They also come out and do volunteer classes on rehabilitation, importance of us all staying hydrated. They do, they provide some medical, vital signs, things like that if we need it. And they do it all on volunteerism, all donations and stuff. So on behalf of them, I want to thank you, and I'm sure they'll put it to very good use. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a special guest tonight,
All dressed up in his uniform.
I know, I'm not used to that.
I will, is there any public comment that is not related to the tree hearing? Because we can take that at this time. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, you can go up to the podium, thank you.
Over here.
Mm-hmm, thank you.
Hi there, Timothy Edson, 220 Osgood Street. Lies at the intersection of Osgood and Bay State Road. I'm here about the signage that's proposed on Bay State Road and the other street, the do not enter sign specifically. I know that this proposal was related to cut-through traffic at school pickup and drop-off time. My wife and I have no issue with the cut-through traffic, but we do have a potential issue with do not enter signs that cut off a major thoroughfare to our home, basically, because our driveway is along Bay State Road. So our preference is not to have those signs, but if the town wants to go ahead with that, we ask the do not enter signs have the white rectangle in the center have the exact times that you don't want cars entering the street, specifically the school pickup and drop-off times, like Monday through Friday, whatever the hours are, or at least have an exception to residents of Bay State Road and the other street. That's all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
May I ask a question? So you're going to come through off of Osgood Street then, because if you're not allowed to go down through...
It's coming off Chickering Road is where the signs are proposed.
Okay, but,
Yes, they would have to enter through Osgood.
We'd have to always enter through Osgood Street,
Yeah,
but if
that's
you're
what I
coming
was
from
saying.
Mass Ave, which we always are, it's more convenient coming from Chickering Road onto Bay State Road. And that's being basically cut up.
That's what I'm thinking. It makes it a little bit more difficult for the residents.
Yes, it does. That's the reason we're,
Okay, I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure I understood it
of
correctly.
course. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Madam Chair, do you want me to do the update on COVID?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
This will be a quick update. So these are numbers as of 9/9. We're updating once a week on Thursday, and kudos to Brian LaGrasse, our health director, has put together a really comprehensive reporting process that you can all find right on our website. So on 9/9, on our Thursday update, we had a total of 89 active cases. 17 of those were aged 0 to 11. One was aged 12 to 15. That one person was not vaccinated. In ages 16 to 19, we had 8 positive cases. 3 of those were vaccinated, 5 were not vaccinated. Ages 20 to 29, we had 15 cases with 8 vaccinated and 7 not vaccinated. 30 to 49, we had 28 cases with 12 vaccinated and 16 not vaccinated. 50 to 64, we had 13 cases with 4 vaccinated and 9 not vaccinated. 65 to 74, we had 4 cases with 2 vaccinated and 2 not vaccinated. And 75 plus, we had 3 cases with 2 vaccinated and 1 not vaccinated. So something really different from what we were seeing in the past, where the majority of our cases were really hovering at that 65 plus point. We're now seeing the kind of data flipped, and we're seeing more of the cases huddled really in the 20 to 49 phase, but more cases in the kids than we've ever have seen before. And the cases are really strikingly higher than they were last year at this time. Additionally, I think some other important information, if I can get it to kind of scroll down for me here, let's see, is that 50% of the cases that we're seeing are household clusters, which means that the cases are linked to household transmission. That's pretty consistent with what we have been seeing with this variant. We have a 2.81% positivity rate over the last 14 days with a 22.4 incident rate. So that's the number of new cases per 100,000 people. If you remember these numbers from earlier in last year. We also had 4,167 tests in the last 14 days, but it should be noted that Merrimack has made the decision to test all of their students, vaccinated and staff, whether they were vaccinated or not vaccinated. So that's bringing our test number up and our positivity rate down. so a little bit different than what we have been seeing before. And right now, based on the state data, about 95% of the COVID cases in Massachusetts are the Delta variant. They basically are doing random sample testing in order to determine which variant it is and then giving us that information. We will continue to update this every Thursday. Our weekly case counts obviously are rising, but what we're actually seeing is kind of more alarming daily case increases. So one day last week, we actually had 17 cases in one day, which was highly unusual. When I was talking with the health director earlier today, we kind of equated these numbers back to when we saw the large cluster that we had at the college. And that's not what we're seeing here. These are obviously individual households. Essex County is designated as a high transmission area at this time, and we are now requiring masks in all municipal buildings.
I don't know if you said it, I was trying to listen to all of it because you had so much information. What percentage are hospitalized?
So I don't have that information. I could tell you that in Massachusetts altogether, there's only 622 hospitalizations. Of that 622, 66 are in the ICU, and there's also 93 intubated patients of the 622. As far as information about our number of hospitalizations, we don't typically get that through the database.
I don't even want to ask this question. Any fatalities?
Our total deaths has stayed at 89 for the past few months,
Okay, well, that's
which is great news.
Yeah.
Yes. We have a total cases of 3,309.
And our vaccination rate is about 60, correct?
It's about
in town?
60%. It's higher with our older population. 67%.
Oh, that's,
Fully. 72%. 72% partially.
Any other questions?
Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
update.
Thank you very much. So we're gonna move to the tree hearing. We're gonna ask DPW to come forward, Jim and John, and they're gonna give us a presentation, and then we'll move into the public hearing after that. Unfortunately, Trevor, our tree warden, could not be with us tonight because he's ill. So if there are questions, we can certainly get them to him and get those answered.
Okay, I'll take the message.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Wait for one day.
Well, thank you for having us. As mentioned, Jim Stanford, DPW Director, John Bergese, Town Engineer, Assistant Director. We're also joined by Project Engineer Curtis Johnson and Staff Engineer, new Staff Engineer, Kelly Messer. So they've done a lot of the yeoman's work on this, so I may refer to them at some point. The presentation does coordinate with the staff report that's in your packet. This is for the gas impact area, contract 2A, tree determination. And with that, I'll just proceed. I think it's, as far as the tree hearing goes, that's in accordance to Mass General Laws 87. The tree warden did conduct a tree hearing on July 29th. As part of the hearing, we posted 29 healthy trees in that contract area that need to be cut down, and primarily for sidewalk improvements. The tree warden did receive written objection to the cutting. Therefore, in accordance with the public shade tree law, the board will need to make a decision if we can move forward with the cutting. Before I get going, I would like to just provide a little bit of background just on the area of contract 2A. As you can see up on the screen, and I don't know if the pointer doesn't work on this, I apologize. But essentially, it's bounded by Waverly Road, Mass Ave, and Main Street, a little bit past Main Street, down to the river. We did exclude Waverly Road from this. It is part of the gas impact area. We have some major improvements that we want to do relative to parking, school drop-off. We've been working with the school on that. And we have some elevation changes we'd like to make over off of Maple Street. So I think what we'd like to do at some point is come back to the board and give a full presentation on what we're proposing. We still have a little more design work to do, as well as give an update. I think it's past overdue for an update. We do get a number of calls as to when street is on the list, so I think it'd be good to provide you an update. We did break the area up into neighborhood. I mean, essentially, this is a fairly large neighborhood. It encompasses about 4 miles of roadway, all disturbed as part of the gas emergency. There are a few roads that we are including as part of our just annual roads program. We didn't want to go into the neighborhood and then leave some roads unfinished. We are required as part of the settlement to do the roadway and sidewalks, meeting ADA requirements. As I mentioned, a lot of the work we're doing is to meet ADA requirements, and hence the need for the tree cutting. I mentioned that there were 29 trees that need to be cut. That's part of the posted tree hearing. However, we did an analysis of all the roads in this area, and there are 30 additional trees that need to be cut for safety reasons. The tree warden determined that the trees were either dead or dying, or have infestations, or part of the ash trees, which have the ash borer. So what we wanted to do, though, is we wanted to include the entire area, the entire impact zone, even though it's not part of the public tree hearing. We wanted residents to see what the impacts to the entire area. So we used orange tape on all the dead trees, and we used green tape along with the posting for the 29. So it's a total of 59 trees that need to come down as part of this project. As I mentioned, the 30 hazardous trees, we're obligated to take those down. Once something is listed as hazardous, we do need to take that down. But it's important to note that if not but for the gas emergency, we probably wouldn't have taken on this analysis. But once we did, we really need, once it's been identified, the tree warden has identified it as hazardous, we really need to take those down. I did want to give just this is actually a slide that we used probably within the last 2 years when we gave our public presentations. We knew that when we were looking at all the areas, this was going to be a challenging area just because of the trees. As you can see that triangle there, that we noticed this a few years ago. The utility company has come in and actually cut this tree. I believe that's on Marblehead. That's on Marblehead Street there. And that's typical of the clearing that they would do. Now, this picture is a few years old, but it is something that we see throughout the area. As well as the other impact that we see are the tree roots that are going into the sidewalks area. In utility poles themselves, and as well as narrow grass strips. So we see that, that's quite typical, especially in this area. We wanted to talk a little bit about the declining health, because we know that there are 30 trees that are unhealthy. So what we did is we started looking through some street views in some of the photos we have, and you could see some of the decline just in the 8 years of these two pictures. This tree, if you notice on the left-hand side, one of the major leaders had come down at some point. This is over on Anna Street. You can also see the tree cover is starting to thin. When we spoke to the tree warden, it's not surprising when you look at it. There's not a lot of room for the tree to grow with the asphalt, the encroaching of the asphalt, and so the sidewalk itself is in the critical root zone. So we have a number of trees that fall into this category. So why are we doing this? As far as the sidewalks go,
As you know, sidewalks are a large priority. It's in the master plan, as well as the Board of Selectmen goals, to do upgrades where possible, to fill in gaps. As we looked at this area, a lot of the sidewalks are encroached by the trees encroach on the sidewalk. ADA issues, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act, and I would mention on the ADA issues, a lot of times people think of it as just wheelchairs, but it's really if you walk with a cane, if you have sight issues. All of those fall into this category of ADA, and we have design considerations. We can't have more slope than 2% on a cross slope, which is relatively flat. You can't have a roller coaster effect. You can't go up over tree roots. You're actually supposed to follow the natural grade of the roadway and the sides. As well as you need 4 foot of clearance or 3 foot clear. So 4 foot width with 3 foot clear. Here's an example, I think it's over on Dewey Street, that clearly we can't meet that. Not within the right of way, for sure. Another consideration, actually, this photo, I don't recall what street it's on, but so it gives you a good view of a couple of other constraints that we have. The right-of-way is relatively narrow out here. We don't have a 50-foot right-of-way, which is what you would see on a new roadway. So we are limited on where we can move the sidewalk. I know we get a lot of residents who ask us, well, can't you just go around one side of the tree or the other? We are bound by that right-of-way, as well as we have constraints. If you look here, you've got hedges, you've got walkways, you've got fences, so there's not a lot of room to fit a 4 foot sidewalk, 3 foot clear, without impact to an abutter. We don't have a right to take property. We could certainly ask for easements. My experience is that isn't, a lot of times residents don't want to do that, especially in a densely populated area where you have houses and walkways and driveways where you have limited space. So this is a good example of that. In addition to that, one of the other things that we look at is, well, can we go around the tree on the street side? So we look at, let's take some of the roadway. So you've got let's say a 25-foot roadway, and you take 5-6 feet, put curbing, and that's a possibility. With one exception, you do end up prohibiting parking. I can tell you that throughout the resident meetings, we've had a number of resident meetings. What we heard is residents and abutters do not want to lose their on-street parking. They want to keep it as much as possible. I should mention we've had a number of meetings, site meetings, where we actually sent letters out to the abutters. I think there were 3 weeks in a row. In addition to that, those who couldn't make it, Curtis and Kelly have gone out and met with residents individually. Again, we are trying to take a neighborhood approach to this. We're trying to get as much feedback as we possibly can. The other problem with putting putting the sidewalk in the roadway, so narrowing the roadway so you have enough room for 2 cars to pass, but you eliminate any type of parking. You also introduce drainage issues. One of the things that we've seen in this area, there's not a lot of formal drainage. It's an old area of town. They just didn't install a lot. So we see a lot of puddles. We see a lot of that. When you introduce curbing or berm, you're trapping the water as well. Then the other thing is, one of the things that we think is a viable option, on a roadway, this happens to be Dewey Street. If we have sidewalks on both sides of the road, why don't we eliminate on one side and be able to save, that way we'll still meet the ADA requirements because you're going to have an accessible path. We really thought this was a viable option until we got into the resident meetings. On Dewey Street, I could tell you it was absolutely overwhelming. Residents did not want to lose their sidewalk on either side of the street. Their preference, I will tell you, is take the trees down. They would rather have the trees taken down. And as we talked a little bit about it, a little bit more with the residents, a lot of it is because their front doors, it's the only connection to their driveways. So they really didn't want to lose that. And Dewey Street's a really good example of what we're facing. As you can see, there are a number of locations where the trees have impacted the sidewalk. There really is no way to fix that sidewalk meeting current standards without taking these trees down. And we really thought it was a viable option, but like I said, it wasn't something that the residents were interested at the walkthrough. The other thing I would note with Dewey Street, there are actually 13, so we have 29 healthy trees that we have to take down. 13 of them are on Dewey Street. So I know, so we've got 4 miles of roadway that we're going to be redoing, and this is a rather large cluster on Dewey Street. So I will tell you, we were very surprised with the resident input on this. So what have we done to see if we can lessen the impact of this neighborhood? After the tree hearing, we did go out and take another look. Now, I will say, not only did the tree warden look at all the locations, the engineers did as well. We've all been out there many times, but since the tree hearing, we've looked at some other areas. We do think we have some options. Actually, some of the options were brought up during the walkthrough. But again, it's 4 trees. We think that maybe with a little bit of bump out, we can save one on Union Street. If we don't repair on Dana Street, we may be able to, the sidewalk, it's not in that bad a shape. It's actually relatively flat. We think we can possibly just do some minor tweaking in that area, and we could save another tree. And then there is another area over on Hodges Street where we think we may be able to move the sidewalk to the other side of the road. Again, we haven't discussed any of this with the abutters. It's a normal approach that we would take, even though it is the public right-of-way. But we do think that there's some promise there to at least save a couple. I should mention, too, one of the things that we heard throughout the public hearing, residents are concerned about these trees. And there's no distinction between the 30 healthy to the 29 that aren't healthy, or excuse me, the opposite. Residents look at it as these are 59 trees we're cutting down. We did post them because, like I said, we knew the impact would be there. A lot of what we heard is that it obviously provides shade, but it also provides noise reduction, especially with the railroad and the train tracks and the airport. So these are things that we're certainly cognizant of.
And the highway.
The highway as well, that was another one. I thank you for that. And so we know this is an impact. Again, as I mentioned, there's not much we can do about the 30 trees. We are going to take another look at one of them, or a couple of them, but again, they've already been determined to be unhealthy. There is one area we're looking at, another area I should add to this list, over on Belmont, at the corner of Belmont and Marblehead. We are looking to extend the sidewalk. That came out of the neighborhood walkthrough meetings where we have a lot of people walking in this area, and there's no good connection at that point over by the dance studio. So we do think we need to add a piece of sidewalk there. And I should mention, we're limited as to where we're adding sidewalks. We've had a request over on Patriot Street. When we talk to the residents, a lot of people weren't in favor of us extending on their side of the street. So we don't have many more, but we do think there are a few little connections. Another piece over by the Housing Authority that we want to connect. It just makes sense. We have heard from residents that it's tough to get to Main Street with the condition of these sidewalks and the gaps. So at the corner of Belmont, there is one tree that's actually unhealthy. It was part of the tree hearing process, though. We are going to take another look at it. We are doing some intersection improvements out there. Again, this whole project, we're looking at as safety enhancements just as much as just roadway paving. I think that was our charge from the very beginning, do what we can to make this area better, make all the areas better. We know there's been a significant impact because of the gas emergency, which coincidentally was 3 years ago today. And we are under time and budget constraints. I mean, we had a settlement. We can't do everything. We can't put granite curb everywhere, especially with this last year. COVID has increased some of the prices. I can tell you that we do need to move forward with these projects, just because this is the second contract. It'll put us at about the halfway point, but we still have a lot to do. We've already started with with Mass Ave, with the night work. They're actually paving now, I think. Tonight, and continuing into tomorrow, I believe. So that's it. So the project work has already started. We have some other work, so drainage work we're going to be doing over on Belmont Street, and then we'd like to get into the road and sidewalks. So we do expect to do some clearing this year, especially of the hazardous trees, but obviously we'll wait on the other trees till your determination. One of the other things that we heard throughout the tree hearings, and while we walked around with residents, is that there's been a lot of tree clearing in this area. And you'll probably hear it from residents who want to speak tonight, that over the years, the utility company has taken trees down. Trees that have died have not been replaced. And so that's why I think it's adding to the significance of a lot of the cutting that we're proposing. We believe that we need to focus on tree replacements. And again, that's another Board of Selectmen goal, to plant trees. I will tell you that we've talked about a 1-to-1 ratio of replacement. Quite honestly, with the Amazon funds that are coming for tree replacements, we can go well beyond that. In fact, I think we're going to have a harder time finding good spots to place them, but we believe there's a good opportunity here. We've spoken at length with the tree warden about the type of trees we should plant. The town does have a list of 21 replacement species. The problem that I found, or that we've talked, and there's a group who really want to see native trees, not invasive trees, so we're whittling that down. I have an example here of probably 4 that are probably good candidates just because of the size of them. They don't grow too big, because we have to be cognizant of the utility lines. One of the things that we've talked to the utility company about is they're doing more clearing around town. So you're seeing more and more of that V shape. A lot of that is in response to the windstorm. They need to protect their lines. They need to cut down on some of the reliability issues. They see tree clearing as something they need to do, and they will eventually get back into this area. So we see more cutting. So we need to think long term. So, and I know these aren't mutually exclusive. Again, I think this area really needs to have some tree plantings, regardless of the project. With that said, we do have the opportunity to increase some of the grass strips. That's another, I guess, concern that residents have brought up to us, that the grass strips haven't been taken care of. They've a lot of times they've been paved over. So we expect to have plenty of grass strips in this area. And the other thing is, some of the other tree replacements that have been brought up is possibly evergreens, coniferous trees that don't lose their leaves. So not something we've ever considered before, but we do think that there's an opportunity. In fact, we need to speak to the housing authority. We think there have been a number of trees that have been cut down over in that area, so we think that there could be an opportunity to actually put some trees in possibly even this year, as soon as this year. As far as the rest of the replacements, we're expecting fall of 2022. When we do talk about replacements, one of the things that we wanted to do is we actually wanted to go with larger diameter trees. So here's an example of a sugar maple, 6-inch, 8-inch, 10-inch. In speaking with Trevor LaLiberty, the tree warden, he was concerned about that only because the larger the diameter, the longer it takes for the roots to establish, and the likelihood that the trees aren't going to thrive. He said in a lot of cases, you're actually better off going with a smaller diameter, not twig, but not 5 or 6 inch diameter, but probably 3 or 4 inch. The roots will establish quicker, and in some cases, it'll actually grow quicker. So we're trying to balance that. We know there's a need for cover now, and with that, so we'll keep working with the tree warden. We'll also work with the neighborhood groups. One of the things we know is we do want a variety of species. You don't want it all to be the same. We think there's a lot of opportunity here to do that. And, like I said, we're fortunate, although we're constrained by budget on the road and sidewalk improvements, that necessarily isn't the case with the tree replacements. With that, I think I'll turn it over to any questions you may have.
Just a clarification. So when you say 4 feet wide and 3 foot clear, what does 3 foot clear mean?
Yeah, why not?
The sidewalk.
Yeah, so you're allowed to have an obstruction of some sort, like a telephone pole or something that could
okay.
be in the sidewalk. But as long as you need 3 feet, 36 inches, so like a wheelchair could get by that from the edge of the sidewalk to whatever the obstruction may be, a mailbox or something like that. That's what they're talking about.
Okay, and then one more question. So you kind of teased us with these larger trees at the end of the presentation, but then said probably not the best idea. So what would be the best idea so if we wanted to go with wider diameter trees, 6 foot, 6 inch, 8 inch, 10 inch, what would be the mitigation plan to ensure that they thrive? And what's the wash rate or the ratio of potential not thriving? I mean, is it something we can manage?
I think we can certainly try. I think if we have areas where there's a large grass strip, or like in the case of where, and I apologize because the neighbors call it a certain area that was clear cut over the last few years, where it's grass area, there's no houses there. If we can plant larger trees there, I think we should. Now, one of the things that we've experienced with buying trees is a lot of nurseries don't stock a lot of large trees. So let's say the town decided, you know what, we're going to go for broke. We're going to try planting 6 inch diameter sugar maples. We may not be able to get all of the same in the same nursery. We may have to go to multiple nurseries. So there are some challenges with that.
Sure.
With that said, we do not want to plant little twigs, and I think that's one of the things that the residents have been concerned about, that we're going to come in and just smaller trees. So I think we still have a lot of work to do with this. But if there are areas we can get larger trees and we can find the areas, one of the things that we've talked about in our tree replacement program, does it make sense to plant them on the backside of the sidewalk on private property? Public shade trees can still be on private property. The town used to have a program about 40 years ago where they actually did that. Some of the residents said they'd be very much interested. Again, we have a lot of density in this area, but I think we need to think outside the box in that, and we can work on that. And again, I think there is a lot of opportunity. But again, I don't want to discount we understand that this is an impact to the neighborhood. We certainly understand that.
Sure is.
I have a couple of comments. So years ago, we had a full tree department, and they worked full-time maintaining and planting, and it was a local man whose name is familiar to those of us who've been around, Mr. LaFawn, and it was a great program. Well, they stopped that, and that's when the trees started deteriorating. And it was a while ago. I can see Mrs. Dufresne nodding her head. It's probably been, at least 30, maybe 40 years. So maybe that's something, I don't know if we can use some of the Amazon money to help with tree maintenance, or if it's just, I'm a huge tree proponent. I fought for that Amazon money, and we got taken care of really pretty well. And prior to that, we had a settlement with Wheelabrator. Not that this Wheelabrator did something wrong, but another Wheelabrator did. And as part of the settlement, I said, well, make it trees. They're environmentally friendly. They clean the air. they're actually good even with people with disabilities and handicaps who have trouble breathing. So trees are important, as are our ADA rules, but trees are important too, just on the health of the community. So those are my comments, but I do really like the idea of planting trees on private property, and the owners would take responsibility of watering them. And I think it's just sort of, it's a nice compromise where you'll get a nice tree, it'll be a healthy tree. And the other thing too, because I lost a lot of shrubs and trees because of Columbia gas as well, because they were cooking the roots next to my foundation. But one type of tree that I've learned, and I actually planted a few in my yard, is the Cleveland pear, which is kind of, it flowers, it's beautiful, it grows quite fast, and it's used in places where there's not a big patch of grass. And they grow to about 30 to 50 feet, but they're kind of cone shaped. But the reason I researched it, and it was a tree that's pretty favorable to tight locations, and it has beautiful white flowers. And there is a street in town, maybe Dickie, you could help me with it. The Susi family lived on it, and they had all beautiful cherries on the whole street, both sides, and it was just stunning.
I'm not sure.
You don't remember? I can't think of the name of it. Over by Linden in the back there. But that might be a lovely idea for some of these neighborhoods. It brings great beauty, not only function of a shade tree or whatever, or some shade. It's, certain times of the year you're going to go down that street and it's going to take your breath away because it's so pretty. So something to think about. I'm glad we're doing it, but I got to be honest. If there's a tree that's on the fence, I'd say give it a chance and start planting where the ones you have to come down, plant there first. So it's just not like, just cut, like shocking. I mean, we talk about tree shock. How about neighbor shock? So if we could try and keep the ones that maybe have a chance and take down the ones that are a danger. We don't want tree limbs falling on our children as they walk to school. It just might kind of help with the shock, and then try to get some of those fast growers as well, that within 4 or 5 years you've got a tree there. Well, anyways, those are my comments.
We did actually speak to the contractor. We don't expect, because there are a lot of trees, we don't expect them to come in and just clear cut in a couple of days. In fact, we expect this project, we'll be fortunate at this point if we can get Marblehead Street done. And so it's going to go into next year. It had been planned on, almost all of these projects will start in the fall and continue into the next summer. They're just too big of an area. So, and as the contractor spoke with us, they're unlikely to get a tree company that's going to be able to do them all at the same time. So we are gonna space it out. The fall is the best time to plant, so it's tough to plant. We're going to miss this growing season. The other thing too is because we have a lot of work to do in the shoulders, we're going to cause disturbance. So you wouldn't want to plant a tree and then disturb it. So that's something we have to consider. But your point to the pear trees, one of the pear trees is on the list. The flowering trees we think those would be good additions. But again, these are neighborhood decisions, and we'll certainly do whatever the neighborhood wants as far as the replacements.
My research, what you have an arborist, was basically the Cleveland pear is the hardiest of the pears. Now, this doesn't produce pears. You're not getting, you're shaking your head. You did not have a good experience with it.
Terrible tree. They're invasive. That's known as the Bradford pear. And I can speak to that during the public comment, but they're beautiful trees, but they're invasive.
That's why we have a tree warden.
So getting back to a comment, I think maybe just following up to one of Rosemary's comments. So, can the project progress in a manner where you're not, we're not clear cutting trees, but we're working in an area, work the project, replace the trees, and then move to another area? Is that within the project plan, or is it, take the trees down, do the sidewalks, replace the trees? I mean, I think it would be less invasive to the neighborhood if you could work in sections and replace those trees before you go to the next area, so. And I know that, I'm not sure what your project plan looks like, or if that was in the plan, but how, is that a possibility to complete sections?
I think it's gonna be tough, because other than drainage, they're gonna come in where we move around wherever we need to do the drainage. The road work is really gonna go street by street, and they're gonna continue through, so it's not, and then usually the restoration doesn't occur until after the road is done, the sidewalks are in, the driveways are done. So that's gonna be tough to accomplish. With that said, if we can work around trees and then have to come back, there's gonna be some expense to it. There really is in doing that. We have to look at what the project impact budget will be relative to that. There may be some opportunities, but again, even if you look at this map, I mean, there's a cluster over by, Dewey Street and that area right there. You don't wanna pay for setups for a tree crew to come in and, and then have to mobilize again, because that will add substantial cost. But yes, if we can work around, we will certainly talk to the contractor with that.
We're on a limited schedule too, right, to use the Columbia Gas money? We have to be complete with all of these contracts within 4 years?
Well, it was 5 years.
5 years.
We've actually, I think we're making an argument for a force majeure, as well as meaning that because of COVID, that's one reason. The other reason is Columbia Gas, just as we were about to start our first contract one, they met with us in August of 2 years ago now and said that they have compliance work that they had to do, and they actually had to dig up again. So we've put them on notice that between that and COVID, we're probably a year behind at this point. We're going to try. We were hoping that we could speed things up. Part of the problem is with COVID is it is making it difficult to get crews and as well as materials, as well as bringing the cost up. So, but we are, yes, we do have, in our mind, we have 6 years. We're already starting to look at the next area contract. We've already started the work on contract 2A. Again, we'll bring that before you, and then the next
2B.
area, 2B, excuse me, and then we're going to the next area, which is across Waverly Road. Again, we have some other opportunities there where we have some real challenges with sidewalks out there. I won't say that trees are the biggest impact out there, but elevation-wise, if you look along like Maple, and it's nearly impossible to make these meet ADA. But so we're gonna try and accelerate the project. My goal was to get it all done in 5 years. It's probably gonna take us 6.
I think just it's important to add that we tried to do these projects by neighborhood so that it would be the best bang for our buck, because we'd be mobilizing in one area, but it also would be the least obtrusive to people, because it is a pain to be doing one street in one area and then come back the next year and do the next street in the next area. So, well, I think it's impactful for the neighborhood. It was designed like that purposefully so that we could have the best ability to spend that money.
I think it should be noted, there is no deadline for the Amazon money, though.
No.
Tree replacement money would be there for.
Yes, we will have that forever, and it starts, it's paid $175,000 a year. The first payment is within 30 days after the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. So a total of $700,000 for trees.
I am very appreciative that you guys have taken the time to work with the neighbors and that all the neighbors have been so invested in this process. I think it speaks volumes about the community that we live in. So thank you to everybody for that. We've received tons and tons of feedback. So one thing, and I think you sort of addressed this, but I'm just gonna get right back to it. On Dewey Street, because they are so impacted, I spoke with a couple of residents who thought it might lessen the impact on Dewey Street if they got bigger trees replanted, so because they're losing so many at once. So I don't know if you can speak to that or just kind of keep that in your, in your back pocket.
You
But
mean
will
on the
they?
back side of the sidewalk or for tree replacement?
For tree replacement, yeah, because they're losing so many, and it will just take that much longer for it to fill back in. So, they would be appreciative of that. And, is this the type of thing where you'll go back into the neighborhoods and get down to the nitty gritty with the neighbors about the types of trees or?
One of the things I'll
and
point out,
placement?
I will point out Curtis Johnson. He travels in the neighborhood just about every single day. There aren't many people that haven't seen him. He wears a nice big brim hat. He should have put it on tonight. In addition to that, I'll make this known. His phone, his office phone actually goes to his cell phone, and he's continuously making return calls, and he's out in the neighborhood. You will, we always point them out for that reason, and most people have seen him. I think so we had 3 weeks of just walkthroughs with residents that we actually sent individual letters. We captured quite a few people who, and a lot of times it was just, they wanted to know what was happening in their front yard. That's why we go out there. It doesn't make sense to do it in a setting like this. So this will be a continuous process. It's not a one-time thing by any means.
Thank you. I know you guys have put a lot of work into this, and I appreciate that you've gone out, like Janice said, to all the residents and made that connection. And I know we've all been impacted by Columbia gas, and unfortunately, we're still living through it. And you're right, they did redig up my street. So I understand why that delay, and they should give us more time. So I appreciate you addressing that. And the types of trees and the fact that it's going to be a one-to-one replacement is really important. But I think we have a lot of residents here, so we will hear from them as well. And I will entertain a motion to open the public hearing. I believe we have a lot of public comments, so we'll try to limit comments to 2 to 3 minutes so that we can keep things moving. So if I could get a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll move to open the public hearing for the removal of public shade trees in gas restoration contract 2 area.
I'll second that, or Jan.
I have
Either one. I'll second.
I have a motion and a second, and all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are in the public hearing for the shade trees in contract area 2, and we will open public comment.
Madam Chair, do you want to set a timer for the public comment?
yep.
Or did you want us to do that?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Anyone's welcome to start.
Hi, my name's Jen Poss. I live at 40 Belmont Street. I'm here to protest for the removal of our public shade trees. I understand that you have a replanting program planned, which is wonderful, but the preservation of our mature public shade trees should also be of utmost importance. These trees are very important for more reasons than 3 minutes' time will allow. For my neighborhood, the clean air and protective sound barrier they provide is irreplaceable, as we literally have the highway, railway, and airport in our backyards. I've lived in this neighborhood for nearly 15 years. My neighborhood used to be tree-lined. I've watched public shade trees in the neighborhood slowly be removed with absolutely no replacement. And in some cases, the green space has been completely removed and paved over, making replacement impossible. At the end of this project, it will effectively make my once tree-lined streets treeless. This project has 5 contract areas, in my understanding. Our section being part of Contract 2. Contract 2 has the 59 mature trees slated for removal in a square area less than a mile. This is absolutely devastating. How many trees were removed for Contract 1? Because I can't find that information anywhere. And how many trees will be removed in the other 3 contract areas? Where will that information be? I understand plans and budgets have been made. The money it costs to remove these trees and grind their stumps could be better spent on their preservation and their upkeep. It's entirely possible to have mature trees and ADA-compliant sidewalks coexist. During my walk-around with the DPW and the town manager, I handed Ms. Rodriguez multiple printouts of PDF files from towns who have achieved the preservation of mature trees and ADA-compliant sidewalks. In my original letter sent to the board, I supplied a link to a company with a very detailed write-up of the many different methods there are to work around mature trees and the many different construction materials that can be used to protect the root system of the trees and achieve ADA-compliant sidewalks. Some methods mentioned are workarounds, such as bumping out the sidewalks around the mature trees or using new materials to protect the root system of the mature trees from the construction of the sidewalks, such as using an air spade to clear around the roots and then packing that space with pea gravel for drainage, and then installing sonotubes and eco-matting for structural support, and then laying down the asphalt for the sidewalks. Please, instead of removing these 59 trees that are in the way of construction, can we please try some new method? It's important. Our mature public shade trees are very important. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lynn Langton, and I live at 10 Surrey Drive. I just want to thank Manager Rodriguez and the DPW folks for coming out yet again to visit the site. I appreciate your dedication to working with everyone trying to solve this problem. I am here because, truthfully, I'm worried about the climate crisis. I'm worried that a storm like last night at some point in the future will cause my roof to come off or flood this town. And I know that mature trees are both our best offense because they suck carbon out of the air, the cause of the climate crisis, and they also play defense by mitigating the damages, providing cooling for extreme temperatures and absorbing stormwaters. In fact, these environmental assets, as well as other economic benefits such as increase in property value and energy savings, can be calculated. I used the National Arbor Days Tree Benefit Calculator and entered our zip code, species, and tree sizes. For the 29 healthy trees, the overall economic tree value is $4,507 per year, and this value will rise with yearly tree growth. That's $45,000 per decade. That's resources leaving the neighborhood. New trees planted will not reach this economic, environmental value for many decades. Now, I want to just highlight one mature tree in the neighborhood. On 100 Belmont Street, there is a 45-inch diameter pin oak. One age calculator I used had it at 135 years old. If that's the case, it was born in 1886. It inhales 2,462 pounds of carbon dioxide and absorbs a whopping 8,890 gallons of runoff stormwater. What a climate warrior that tree is. Saving mature trees will save money. Keeping as many mature trees as possible throughout our entire town will be a solid base upon which to build our climate mitigation plan that I see you have coming up in a couple of articles. Thank you.
I'm Heather McNeil. I live at, I own 1315 Union Street. I'm here to kind of talk more about the tree replacement. And I know we're not quite there yet, but I think it's kind of integral to this whole project. But I believe there is a one-to-one tree replacement plan, and I want to say that I hope that's blown past and that a lot more trees are planted, more than the one that are being removed. And I think, too, I've heard varying things about the green spaces, those green strips that are in between the sidewalks and the road. I've heard both that they're going to be replaced, that are the ones that are there, but I also want to hear that they are the ones that have been removed, paved over, that they're going to be put back, that there will be additional green spaces, especially not under power lines where more public shade trees could be planted. We did talk about deciduous and evergreen trees in some of our walkthroughs, just so that in the winter, again, the impact of the leaves falling isn't so bad for the sound. And we did talk about the creation of a program through which residents could adopt trees that are planted on private property, because I have one of those properties where I think we could definitely put a tree near the sidewalk, but that's in my yard. And we would like that the creation of that program to be kind of ensured through this process. And I want to just make sure, too, that and everyone has said this tonight, the DPW, Jim and John, Trevor, Kelly, Curtis, they have been wonderful. I've seen them numerous times. We've talked. They've been extremely responsive, and I love that. And I hope that continues through the tree replacement process. I want to get a letter from the town when we are at that stage that gives us an outline of all the different replacement options. Put one in front of my house, put one on my property, what are the different tree options? I want that all spelled out, and I would like it mailed to my house and to all the residents in all of these contract areas, just so it's not posted on a website and someone misses it. So I'd like to make that suggestion. And we've talked a lot about, when trees are going to be planted, and I'm wondering, too, if this fall, to kind of mitigate some of those problems, or to at least start the process of trees maturing faster, if trees could be planted maybe around the Carl Thomas Playground area. That might help with some of the sound mitigation from that Dewey Street project, as well as for the rest of the area, and I think those could be planted sooner than later. And maybe anywhere along train tracks or the highway that abuts our neighborhood, if there could be trees planted there now that are not going to impact the road project, I would strongly recommend people take a look at that. And lastly, I think a silver lining here, and I know we talked about this at our last walkthrough, was we had a playground master plan. Can we have a tree master plan? So that as projects move forward in our town, anywhere in our community, there is a way to save mature trees. There are some different ways to go around them, go over them, some different things that other people had mentioned, and that there is a replacement program so that this clear cutting and things that have happened in the past don't continue to happen. So thank you again. I know there's so many different there's so many different competing factors here, and I appreciate that you've all listened to everybody and you're trying to balance so much, but thank you very much.
Good evening, Chris Allen, 3 Belmont Street. Happy birthday, Mr. Nobley. Just had to spit that out there. I'd also like to thank the select board members that actually came down to my street, walked the street with me. Thank you, Ms. Phillips and Ms. Bates. That was really lovely of you to do that. And also the DPW, all the workers, and Mr. Johnson and his assistant Kelly here. That was really special. Was to be able to do that kind of outreach and transparency is so much appreciated, I think, in every neighborhood. And I know that you all received a letter from a local environmental group. I think perhaps it was the church. And in the letter they said, removing virtually all the trees in our neighborhood, a neighborhood with disturbingly few. Now, I mean, I've lived in that neighborhood for 37 years, and I kind of have to take exception to that because we don't have a lack of trees. There are a lot of trees. Now, I know there's a bunch of trees that are slated to be cut down, but if you look at the overlay that you had, and I know it's all looks brown because that's how you faded out the overlay, but it's really a very green area with pretty large swaths beside the railroad tracks and also beside the highway. So it isn't like this place is going to be denuded of trees. I just think that simply isn't true. And if you walk through the neighborhood, almost every yard has trees right in the yard. So there will be a different look along the street, but it's not like all the trees are going to be gone. I do take exception to that. From my point of view, then, this really isn't an environmental disaster, not even close. What I see this as is a proper maintenance by the town. Finally, on the 3rd anniversary of our Columbia gas disaster, we're going to get sidewalks. I can't tell you how excited I am to perhaps have a proper sidewalk in front of my house where my mother can walk or since she really can't walk very well, that I can push her in a wheelchair. That simply can't happen right now. The neighborhood might look different for a little while, but new trees are going to be planted. We know that this is temporary. When I first moved into the house, my house, you saw the tree in front of my house. I was one of the houses there with the car and the hedge and all that. That's my house. That tree was planted there by the town, and it's grown a lot over the last 25 years or so. And it's time for it to be recycled. It really is time for that tree to come down. It's a danger, even though it's not slated as a dangerous tree. It's been trimmed so often by the utilities. It's this big Y. It's a danger to the utility lines. It's ruined the sidewalk. I have been wanting the town to cut down that tree for at least 3 years. I'm not allowed to cut it down. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the town. So cut down the tree, Curtis. Please cut down the tree. I'll be so happy to see that. Change happens. It's not always bad. The other issue with that corner right there with my hedges, which we were trying to mitigate and push back, is it's a bus stop there for all of our neighborhood children. And it's, right now, it really isn't suitable. The walkway is not a great place for these kids to stand every morning. So having it repaired and made a proper sidewalk and having a newly paved street would be wonderful. I'm thrilled. Thank you so much for your outreach and working so hard to work with the neighbors. It's very, very much appreciated.
My name is Nancy Sauer. I live at 44 Equestrian Drive, and in the interest of full disclosure, I do not live in the affected neighborhood, but I am active in climate justice work, and that's how I became involved in these discussions. One of my favorite expressions is think globally, act locally. I'm sure most of us here tonight are concerned about the global climate crisis. Increasing temperatures across the globe threaten, among other things, species diversification, global food supply, available living space for humans, and more broadly, the very availability of healthy air to breathe and a safe climate to live in. One might think that salvaging a few trees in one neighborhood would be a drop in the bucket, but as you have heard, to some residents of the neighborhood, the impact is drastic. This is a chance to act locally. I fully understand the need to add and improve sidewalks. In fact, when we were in the neighborhood, I felt a lot of sympathy for a lady that I saw walking down the middle of the street with her grocery cart because she didn't have a sidewalk to go on. So I am not against sidewalks, believe me. And I really appreciate that the Public Works Director and Town Manager and others have taken steps to understand the concerns and to discuss possible mitigation. But I would ask that the Select Board take it to the next step and just challenge the team to come up with a new plan that reduces the number of mature, healthy trees to be removed. It certainly won't be 0, but does it really have to be 29? Perhaps some of the alternate techniques for sidewalk construction that have been shared with the Public Works Department can be used. I participated in the walkthrough where we only went through part of the area, and collectively as a team, or as a group, I should say, we brainstormed ideas and came up with that idea about moving the sidewalk on Hodges Street, I believe it was, to save 2 trees. So those are some of the kind of creative things that I would just ask the team to look at. And I would also echo what Heather said about asking the board to challenge the team to start some kind of tree replacement program this fall. And the last point I want to make is when we looked at the goals of the project that were published on the town website, salvaging mature trees was not listed as one of the goals, so I would ask in future projects going forward that that be considered as one of the goals of these projects. Thank you.
Hi, Elizabeth Guerin. I live at 85 Johnson Street, and also in the interest of full disclosure, I do not live in the affected area either. I did attend the walkthrough and also really appreciate the way DPW has handled this. Town manager came out, walked along with us. And one of the things in the proposal that I noted, they had the proposed alternatives summary that DPW presented. And I understand from Melissa, I believe that as a select board, even if you vote yes to move ahead on cutting down these trees, that you can do so with some direction. And that I would ask that at a minimum, I love everybody else's ideas, and I think, working with DPW and continuing to have these discussions is important. But also, if the board can at least give some direction to support the idea of fully exploring alternatives with the neighbors, with the ones that DPW has come up with the ones that Jen has provided information on, so that it's not just a yes vote, that there's a little bit more behind this, that you're putting your collective concern about this issue behind that. And then on a secondary note, one of the reasons that I'm really involved in this is that I read this book this year. I don't know how many of you have read it, but it's Nature's Best Hope. And it speaks to the issue of acting locally, which Nancy just brought up. One of the things we think that, national parks, we've got lots of wild spaces. We really don't. The vast majority of land is in private hands. And localities, I like to think that localities are kind of a microcosm of those private lands. So we need to think about planting trees that are native trees, that actually belong in this area. And that speaks to your point, Rosemary. I love that you're very excited about the trees. I'm really, that you're pro keeping these trees. But we have to be careful about what we plant. And I think it's really important that as public people working on public lands think about the need to plant trees that belong here. Because our birds, our pollinators don't recognize a tree like a Bradford pear, for example, as food. It's the same. They're the same tree.
I did hear differently, but
yeah,
but that's okay.
Yeah, but Cleveland and Bradford, they're kind of the same tree.
Arborists look into what's best for the area.
Right, but the problem with a tree like that is that native species, pollinators, birds, caterpillars, don't recognize that tree as food. It's from Vietnam. It would be like asking you and me to suddenly grow wings in 50 years and be able to fly. These animals and plants can't evolve fast enough to learn to eat and live in trees that come from someplace they don't recognize. So I'd ask you all to think about reading this book, or at least read a summary of it. It's life-changing. You won't walk around your neighborhood without going, is that a native tree? It's a really important book, and I wish you would all read it.
I don't disagree with the native trees. I miss the mighty oaks, and, I have one in my yard. I lost one to a lightning strike.
Well, when you read about this,
I
the mighty
absolutely,
oak.
Elm Street doesn't have any more elms. I know that's a tough tree. Yeah, right, and some nice person helped us out with that. I absolutely agree with you, and we can't have all shorter trees because of the electric wires. We still need to have places for these great trees.
Yeah.
We agree.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Joe Mickles. I live at 9294 Union Street. And we were impacted pretty hard down there on borders where Beverly Street goes. We were the last ones to get our gas on. We got it on in December. And we're worried about our pipes to freeze. Now to hear that it's going to take 6 years for this project to fix that road, it's a mess down there. Sidewalks a mess. The street's a mess. And we don't have any trees there because it's where my yard is. But I do have a hitching post, a marker from the town that butts up to the sidewalk. My parents bought the house in '55. I came along in '63. I want to know if I'm going to still be able to keep that marker there. And where you're going to pave the sidewalks, they go from sidewalks. I have off-street parking, goes right over where my driveway is. And I want to know if you're not going to put a curb there so I can get into my driveway. That's all. And good luck with the trees and everything. There is a tree on the corner of Union and Waverly that's probably 150 years old. You should take a look at those big trees. That if those ones don't have to come down, they shouldn't. There's a lot of memories in those trees.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Jim, did you want to?
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, I can certainly speak to some of that. The 6 years, Union Street is part of this contract, So hopefully within the next year and a half, that area will be done. As far as like a survey marker or a hitching post, we endeavor not to hit. We know throughout town, this comes into play when we're plowing. Residents put things in the right of way all the time. We don't go around looking for them. On a project like this, if it's at the back edge of the sidewalk and we have our 4 feet, we don't want to disturb it. It's like mailboxes. We put mailboxes back all the time, ideally in a good spot if they're being hit from plowing, let's say. As far as driveway access, that's a constraint. We do not restrict driveways, existing driveways. That's one of the, to be honest, that's one of the challenges we have, meeting sidewalks. And one of the reasons why we can't put a lot of curb in, especially on this project, there are so many driveways. The sidewalk literally would be going, because you have to ramp down. So we generally try and go straight across driveways, do the apron, and match the existing. And sometimes we do have to go into private property to make the adjustments, but we try and limit that just because of the expense. So no, we're not, I don't know his specific house off the top of my head. But again, these are the type of questions we get all the time, and that's why we have Curtis and Kelly and John and myself. We're more than happy to meet them out there.
So one of, sorry, I can't remember which person talked about this, but I think they made a very good point. Some of the places are so just covered with hot top. Will you be cutting holes into the hot top to plant a tree? Because some of the roads are it's just hot top going, the sidewalk and.
Yeah, there were a lot of points. I didn't want to just jump in. Obviously the residents they want to speak. That's another challenge. In fact, I had a photo up a little while ago. Rather than scroll it, I'll explain. So I forget what street it is, but resident there doesn't have a driveway. So over time, they took it upon themselves to remove the grass strip because they were parking on the grass strip, and they put pavers there, and they have enough for 2 vehicles, husband and wife, 2 vehicles, and they came to us and asked us, please don't remove that. That's where we park. Don't curb that. Mm-hmm. We're trying not to disturb areas like that, and I think that area, because they don't have a place to park, and so we have some challenges there. There are some other locations where residents did the same exact thing. As we were doing our walkthrough, we were saying this would be a good spot to restore the grass strip. And I can tell you, just as any type of complaint, a resident where they're concerned about their front yard, they are objecting to us restoring grass strips. So, we're trying to balance all of the challenges here. And I can't say that we're going to restore grass strips everywhere. Mm-hmm. Some places, and the other thing, especially in this area, I believe some of these areas are designated as you're able to park there in snow emergencies. There are some streets in town. I don't remember if these are the area. But so in some instances, we're better off if they can get off the street, and we've looked for that to try and accommodate. But these are all challenges that we are faced with in this.
Yeah, I guess you've said it pretty well. You're going to have to go case by case and try to work with. You're right. People do need a place to park. They can't park a quarter of a mile away carrying their groceries. And we do have neighborhoods like that. There are old neighborhoods where the homes were built for the mill workers, and it's tight, and they didn't have cars back then, and we certainly have to be sensitive to that as well.
I will note that on some of the other streets, some of the resident concerns that we brought up is that there are people parking on the street when they have a driveway. It's just more of a convenience. So I think on some of the major roads, we are looking at installing curbing and maybe prohibiting where it makes sense. Some of these small local roads, it's a little more difficult to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Is there any more public comment?
Hi, Justin Neely, 13 Union Street. And I don't have so much a comment as a question, and I understand that you won't necessarily take questions, but maybe you'll answer this. I saw some of the slides, and I've heard some of the comments about utilities coming in and cutting trees. And I was curious about the relationship that the town has with utilities and where they take responsibility for taking away some of our assets. And if you could speak to that, that would be helpful, I think.
Jim, if you'd like to respond.
Certainly. I mean, it's like anything else. It's definitely a love-hate relationship. I mean, we have all lost power when they're out there cutting a tree to restore power. By the same token, we look at some of those photos I showed earlier where they've hacked the tree. I will say this, with NGRID, they've been pretty good as of late. I think it's over on Prescott Street. They've been working with us. I believe you mentioned Wheelabrator. NGRID has actually replaced trees in the past, and they've helped us with some of the hazardous trees. There is, under state regulations, the utility company has a lot of leeway. Essentially, if a tree is within their wires, they have a right to trim that tree, and they don't have to do it neatly. I mean, that's, you know, and that's where the hate relationship, because we've had many of calls from residents who, can you believe what they're doing? Not only that, then leave the trees, leave the stumps, and leave, you know, for us to go and pick up. We try and work with them, and I will say as of late, they've been very good to work with. I have to say that. With that said, yeah, I mentioned the wind emergency, where a number of people lost power for quite a while, a few years back. The utility company has taken a hard look at that through working through the state, the PUC. They need to maintain their lines. I think in that windstorm, they claimed that they weren't able to do a lot of the cutting they needed to do. That was one of the things. I went to a few of the PUC, Public Utility Commission's meetings, and they brought that up. So
Well,
they
there
do
is
have a right.
There is a cure to that. It's working towards underground utilities as well.
That's,
You know?
it's an expensive option,
It-
but
it
you're
is.
right. You're absolutely right. Underground utilities in that regard, although they argued that it's not any more reliable. I don't know if I share that, but it's an expensive option. The other thing and this is one of the things why we know, I'm not a tree expert. I don't pretend to be. I have some nice slides here. I get the information from the tree warden as well as our in-house expert. Some trees provide good cover, but don't grow as high and don't impact the utility wires. Again, we need to think long-term, and that's why we need to put a lot of work. I've heard a lot of discussion about a plan. They want, you know, residents want to know to make sure and I know I'm going off topic, but we need to plant the right type of trees that are going to thrive so that 30 years from now, somebody isn't sitting here explaining why we have to cut those down. But yeah, the utility, it's a tough one, especially when we drive around and we see what's been cut.
Well, this board in the past, when they've been a little bit too cavalier about cutting or having poles that are leaning over a family's house, that we've refused to grant their petition until they fixed. There was an incident where we asked for months and months and months, every time they came before us, and we finally said, nope, you do this first and then come back. So we have taken some aggressive action in the past when it was very clear that the pole in a good windstorm was coming down right on somebody's house. So on occasion, we do step it up.
Are there any more public comment? Is there anything else from the board?
I have to say, with such Sophie's choice, that all of you really have worked, it appears to be pretty well together and seem to be working hard to make everybody as happy as we possibly can. But we still have work to do. And I really do appreciate the comments. If there's a tree that's on the borderline, do your best to save it. And I love the idea that you described on how to save some of these bigger trees with cleaning it out, and it was fascinating, actually. But any place where we can save some of our great trees, give it a chance.
Yeah, and maybe to add to that, so I had a couple things I wrote down. I mean, you talked about mitigations for at least 4 trees. Maybe we can take another look, see if there's an opportunity to mitigate some others, especially some of these older ones that people have a lot of, sentimental. I know I have a tree in front of my house that I would be really sad if I lost it, if my kids grew up underneath it and had, rungs and everything in it, so it's an important tree to me. So I know how, trees can become part of the family, believe it or not. So where we can, let's try to save some of these older mature trees. And in the replacement, if we could look into more mature trees, ones that will provide more of the benefits that we've heard described here tonight, where possible. And again, we want to make sure we're doing it prudently, and we don't want to have trees that are going to not take root and have to be replaced again in a couple of years. So, we want to make sure that those trees are mature and that will survive and thrive. Also, we talked a lot about planting trees in residence yards where they're willing to do that. I mean, I think that's a program we really need to look into and do that as much as possible. And then finally, as I said earlier, can we manage the project in such a way that we're not just removing all the trees and just, waiting a year or two to replace them? If we could phase the project. I mean, yes, it's a small area, but it's kind of a big area too. I mean, we can, maybe you can do part of it down in one area and get it set and then move to another area. And I know that might be costly or more costly, but I think we can manage it in some way. So maybe if we can look into that as well. Those were my list.
No, nothing further. No.
Only thing I would say, I think Dick, you've put it together well. One thing comes out very clearly from all this is great respect for the people who are making the evaluation here. And it seems to me that a great amount of trust has been built, responsiveness to the community, and that's part of what makes a community, is really trusting in the professionals. Just like when we go in to see a physician or we go to the mechanic, we know we can do our research and we can be amateurs and we have our own expertise, but at the end of the day, you're paying for these professionals to make their best choice, but listen to you. And that's what I'm hearing and continuously heard tonight, I think, from folks. And we all have our things we want to hold on to and, familiar, but I think I pull that all together and say, and I think, Chris Allen kind of had the great point. 30 years from now, there's going to be another generation that's going to be benefiting from the decisions that are being made and what the trees are today. Just as we are benefiting from those decisions that were made 30 years ago. This is the cycle of kind of life. And literally, these trees embody that. The bonus is that rather than just, as we were 30 years ago, replacing trees, we're upgrading a community. We're upgrading the sidewalks, we're upgrading the streets. It seems to me to be a pretty good deal.
And property values.
Yeah, it all ties in. But I get it. We have to trust one another here. And I'm really encouraged to hear that there's an understanding and acknowledgement of that. So I appreciate that from the professionals. I appreciate that from the neighbors in the community. It's nice to work these things out, even though they may feel a little sweaty at times, right?
I have great vision of what it will be like at its completion, right? With great usable, walkable sidewalks and great trees. It's just that we have to get through it to get there. So keep it up.
So I want to thank everybody that came out tonight for the hearing, and as well as Jim and John and the rest of your department and all the work and time that you guys have put into this, because you know how impacted this neighborhood has been by Columbia Gas. Here we are 3 years later, still talking about it, right? And the fact that you have said it multiple times, you're going to go back to these neighbors and see what is important to them and what trees they think would be important in their streets. And and I think that relationship and that communication is important. It's a neighborhood full of children that walk to school, and I think making those sidewalks better improvement to the schools. I know my kids are on the sidewalks all the time in our neighborhood, so I think that's important, and making it accessible. And I think that the ideas about planting trees in the neighbors' yards to allow them to grow to the proper height and provide shading, and the surrounding parks and abutting land is a great idea too. So again, I thank you for all your time and effort that you've put into this. And I will take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much. So we will be moving on to our next public hearing, which will be for the joint poll petition from National Grid and Verizon on Forest Street. So I'll take a motion to open that public hearing.
So moved to open the public hearing.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have anyone from National Grid?
Hello, Souther. I live at 218 Fairmount Avenue in Saugus, Mass. National Grid is proposing to install what we call a push brace, which is a pole that supports a pole because we can't guy it. Right now, it's guyed by a wire that goes to a dead tree that's being removed by the customer across the street. So because we want to maintain the lines, maintain the straight poles and the reliability in the area, we'd like to keep this pole supported and add this new push brace in the public right-of-way. Does anybody have any questions or concerns?
When
Yes.
you're saying push brace, are you talking leaning another pole, a big pole up against that? Is that what you're calling as a push brace?
Yeah, we're looking to put one pole to support another pole, and we call that a push brace.
But the one with the slant actually does take, quite a bit of space, correct?
It does what with space?
The one that's slanting?
Yes.
It does need quite a bit of space in order to get probably the right leverage, or?
Yes.
Am I correct, or am I thinking of something else?
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's not sitting next to an existing pole. It needs about 10 feet away from this pole
Okay,
to
so I know
make it
exactly
work.
which one it is then.
Okay, great.
So I guess my question is, why can't we put a stronger pole in there, a more well-engineered pole that doesn't need a companion pole to hold it up?
No, all the poles after a certain angle, the lines just pull very hard on these poles.
I know
You
that.
can put a pole, but over time it will still bend it, and the tension on those lines is just that high.
So we've had this before. This has come before us before, and we've pushed back and said, let's re-engineer it so that we can put a pole in there that would support itself. So we don't need to have, because the buddy poles don't really look all that great, and as Select Person Smidelia was saying, it does take a lot of space, especially if that space is going into a neighbor's yard or going into a right-of-way or something. That's a considerable amount of space that needs to be taken up for that pole.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the question is, have the work been done to engineer it so that a single pole can be put in there that can be self-standing, basically?
No, I see what you're saying. In my experience as a designer, all these poles will bend with enough tension over time. The best scenario will be that pole will have to be replaced or repositioned every so often. But if you were to consider the reliability for us, if the lines were to touch, things like that.
So does every pole around town have a guide wire or some type of a support system other than just the pole?
Not every single pole. Usually on the bends, curves of streets, you will see a guy wire or push brace or something of that nature to maintain that pole. And if it's not, then it's usually bending, unfortunately.
Okay. And this one is on a curve? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, it is on a curve, yes.
Sorry, I'm done.
I was just curious what the lifespan of the pole is. Like, does it stay, like, how long does it take for it to start bending?
I don't want to speculate. Every scenario is different. It just depends what's on the pole. Not just us too, but there's also Verizon and other cables that are much thicker and heavier than ours, so it really, you gotta go pole by pole. It could be a year or two, or it could be 10 years. It's really up to.
Yeah, I was curious if you're replacing, is it after 20 years that's too far, or is it every 2 years that this is happening?
I'm not 100% sure for this case, but other things too. If the pole starts bending for this location, because I went by it today, it's a heavily wooded area, in front of the home. Oops, sorry. There's plenty of trees, so if our wires get close enough to the trees, you can damage the tree, but also you have an outage for the area. So the customers can lose power over time. If you get any wind, it just makes things a little tougher. So we really want to keep the poles in where they are. That's where we hope they will be in 5 to 10 years.
So that was my question. This seems sort of like a Band-Aid on a bigger problem, right? So how long would this fix extend the life of the pole that's going to bend?
It's a permanent fix.
So that means the pole would not ever need to be replaced?
Unless a
It
tree
doesn't.
fell on this pole
Okay.
or a car accident, yeah, it wouldn't be replaced.
Okay.
Just
It's
for
not going to
maintenance.
just extend, it's not going to happen again in 5 more years, or?
Absolutely, yeah. I
Okay.
agree with you, yeah.
Is this impact, I just don't have a visual in my mind of where it is. Is there a sidewalk nearby? Like, what is the
It looks like
landscape?
it's across the street, right? It's not in people's front yards, correct?
Yeah, no, I actually met with the abutter from 31 Forest Street. He was here outside before the meeting started. And there's plenty of space. There's actually a wooded area that we're installing this push brace. There's no sidewalk. And the existing pole 4 is right on the road, like it just touches the road. So we're not taking any space. We're not going to interfere with anything. And he maintains his privacy because we're not cutting down any poles, any branches, and that was his concern.
But where does it, as I'm looking at this, so it was 31, but where is 31's front door?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure about that. Where his
Because
front door is.
nobody
but-
would want that right outside there.
It's a wooded area based on the picture that he just showed me.
Yeah, it is a wooded, I mean, it's Forest Street, it is a wooded area. So my question is, it in between property lines?
No, it's not in between property lines. It's kind of in front of his side yard. That's probably my best way to explain it.
So the gentleman that you spoke with, he's no longer here right now?
Yeah, I told him he's more than welcome to stay and speak up if you'd like to, but he was confident that it wouldn't be disturbing his fence and his field of vision and his privacy. His concern was us cutting down another tree to make space for this, and I told him that wasn't the plan.
But if I look at this, it looks like a relatively straight piece of roadway. I thought you said it was on a curve. It seems from the Google picture, it seems like a relatively straight run of road.
Yeah, but there is a small curvature on there, and there's a curvature within the actual pole line too. So it does need support there at that particular location.
Unlike the downtown location, you're right, it will blend in if it's positioned in the right place or between property lines, and I think there's nothing more disturbing than if somebody puts a sign right in front of somebody's front door, like,
Absolutely, I wouldn't want that in my
40
front yard.
miles an hour or whatever, or they would put something like that as people look out their front door. That's not a nice thing to have happen to your home. So,
I think that's pretty far back from the street. So that's 31 right there. So the driveway is over here. So it's pretty, and if you can see, there's a lot of trees in front. So it's pretty far back.
okay. From what Selectman Valencourt has showed me, it does seem to be pretty thick.
Like they're across the
With-
street.
Yeah.
And have you, maybe I missed it, have you discussed with the resident there and explained the situation and what would be constructed?
Yes, I explained to him what our plan is, and he didn't have any obstructions with it. His biggest concern was the privacy and touching of an existing fence that's about 20 feet away from this area. So he's happy that we're not touching that, and he's not losing his privacy.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions? No? Thank you. I will
Thank
take
you.
a motion to close our public hearing.
We just want to see if we have any residents
Oh,
who want
sorry.
to speak. That's okay.
Is there any public comment from? No? No? Thank
Yeah, we're
you.
good.
Okay, good.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion, we close the public hearing for the petition of National Grid and Verizon in New England for a joint pole located on Forest Street.
Second. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we will be moving on to new business. So our first order of new business is to vote on the removal of the public shade trees. I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I would move a very conditional approval that any tree that has any possibility of continuing, that those not be touched, that you only start with the ones that could cause harm to people or property. And also try to, I hope I'm saying everything that's in, want to add to me if I'm forgetting something, that it's done strategically so that it's not just one fell swoop. I mean, that would be, after all that we've all been through with this Columbia gas, it's just another wound, and we don't need that. We're trying to get our lives back to normal and get back into our homes. So I would ask that you work very hard to save trees that have potential, especially the older indigenous species to the area. But if someone's going to get hurt by a tree, then nobody wants that either. We want our children to be able to walk on these streets, or anybody, and not have to worry about branches coming down or.
I'd like to add in.
Yeah, go ahead, add to it.
Just that we include that part of the replanting involves asking residents if they want a tree in their yard. Like that, to me, is sort of a significant part of this plan. So I would move it forward, conditional upon extending the replanting to include private residences.
And some open spaces that exist, like the parks and the rail, wherever we can kind of mitigate that maybe down versus a year from now.
So maybe, just because I'm trying to come up with a motion here. but
Would
maybe
you
with
like
the-
to join
And
into
then I
it?
have one more amendment.
Okay.
I have one more friendly amendment, and it was, I think you guys touched on all of them, but also to plant, where possible, larger, more mature trees that
Okay.
would provide more benefits
Where
sooner.
it makes sense.
That are indigenous.
Okay,
Sure.
so
What
maybe
we
what
saw.
we're hearing is that the motion to approve the trees, the cutting of the trees conditioned on the following. One, evaluation of each tree to determine that it must be removed from the impacted area in order to install the sidewalks.
Healthy tree, each healthy tree.
Each healthy tree, right, the other trees we know they have to go. Two, that we explore the planting of trees not only on public property, but also on private property. Two, and three, that we purchase and plant the largest, most dense possible trees that will prosper in
Where
the.
appropriate.
Where
Makes sense.
appropriate. Okay.
And then also the project management piece. Did you mention that?
I don't know, I missed that part, what were you
To
saying?
be able to, like Rosemary said, not to clear cut, sort of manage the project, so as you're moving through the neighborhoods, you're replacing trees and then moving on to the next phase of the project,
So-
so if that's possible.
Yeah, I will say, I think that's I personally think that's probably the hardest part. But we can certainly look at it. I just, if we didn't have this time crunch of having to spend the money by a certain period, this would be a lot easier.
So why don't we just say where possible?
Where possible,
Where
makes sense.
possible.
Okay.
I think, ultimately, your motion has baked into it everything we've been talking about tonight, which
Yeah.
is trust, that people can continue to work together. I think it's been proven that
everybody.
We work together, so just stay on the same track.
We've made some good progress so far, so we'll continue that
And I guess
progress.
the other thing is, what is the overall timeline anyway? I mean, if it's all gonna be done, from spring to fall next year, then it may not be that much of an issue, right?
True.
The work gets done and then the trees are back in place by the fall. It may not be so much of an issue, but I'm just saying if it's gonna take multiple seasons and multiple years to
Understood.
do it, then.
We don't cut everything at once.
Right.
I completely agree with that.
The one last thing, and I'm sorry I don't remember your name, but your very ingenious plan of how we can maybe save some of the other trees by clearing it out, and you had other things that you described, which were really quite interesting. But if we would at least take a serious look. I'm sorry, could you say your name?
That's Jen.
Yeah, Jen's proposal to see if the arborist would feel as though that we might have some good fits to save some of those big mature trees. I know it's a little bit off your mission, or maybe I'll let you figure it out. We'll put it that way.
Continue to explore mitigation measures for
wish I said
the
that.
trees.
It sounded much
Did
better.
we get all that? You got me? No? All right, we're being recorded, so she'll get it at the end.
I love it.
So the mitigation strategies, communication, trees, as mature as we can be. and
Including on private property.
Communication. And we're really talking about a year from now, the trees will be planted.
Yes, unfortunately. Fall, in
But-
my experience, fall is when they prosper.
Right,
so.
but it's a year from now.
It is.
It will be.
It is September already, isn't
It
it?
is, yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So, thank you, everybody, for coming. Appreciate all your
Thank you
input.
for all your hard work on this.
So I will entertain a motion for the installation of the pole on Forest Street.
Move that the Board of Selectmen approve the petition of National Grid and Verizon New England number 30350642, subject to the conditions contained in the proposed order as presented.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That passes 5-0 as well. Our next item is a request from Lee Blumel of the Interfaith Clergy to use the Common on September 19th from 3 to 4 for an interfaith ritual to mark today, our 3rd anniversary of the Merrimack Valley gas disaster. Is anybody here to speak to that? No.
I
I'm
did
sure I'll
read a
move.
little bit about the plan for that today, and they're essentially going to visit each of the different communities, and it's like kind of a traveling.
Yep.
So I think it's a great idea.
Madam Chair, I'll move approval.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. So again, that'll be on the Common, September 19th, from 3 to 4, correct? In case anybody would like to join. And so our next item is the Multi-Hazard Mitigation and Vulnerability Plan 2021, and I believe Andrew Shapiro is here to present to us, our Director of Community Development. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. For the record, Andrew Shapiro, Director of Community and Economic Development. I am joined by the Jennifer Hughes, who is probably a familiar face to at least some of you here. She was our conservation agent for the town of North Andover for several years, and she is now the Environmental Program Manager for the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission. So bear with me. We have a brief presentation for you. You've already heard a lot of information tonight, so we are going to try to keep it brief.
Remember, we got a grant to do this last year. And it's been a lot of public meetings and internal stakeholder meetings, and they've done a lot of work to get this where we are today, which is exciting.
It is.
You're also the first community in the Merrimack Valley to have an updated hazard mitigation plan.
Look at that.
Okay, and is it Select Board TV room?
There we are.
We can see you down there, so you should be coming
All
up
right.
here in 1 minute.
All right,
Yeah, it looks great.
and that should be coming up.
It's really a pretty picture if you could just get rid of that listing of things you want to talk about.
Your cast out.
As well. Okay, great. So hopefully there we go. So what you're looking at right now is a story map that the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission helped us develop, and we're going to use that to move through the information we're going to present to you. And I'm going to get right into it. This is our agenda, but I'm just going to go ahead and get right into it since we're in the interest of time. I'm going to start off by talking about sort of the process summary for this. So again, we're here this evening to discuss the town's municipal vulnerability preparedness plan and multi-hazard mitigation plan update. Back in early 2020, the town was awarded a planning assistance grant from the Commonwealth's Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs through its Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant Program. The MVP program provides support for cities and towns in Massachusetts to begin the process of planning for climate change resiliency and implementing priority projects. The state awards communities with funding to complete vulnerability assessments and develop action-oriented resiliency plans. Communities who complete the MVP program become certified as an MVP community and are eligible for MVP action grant funding and other opportunities. And I believe this was also a priority that the Select Board had chosen during one of its budgeting processes. Maybe it was last year or the year before. So I'm glad to say that after kind of an interesting year, we've finally come full circle and been able to complete this process. So when we got funding for the plan, the town utilized it to partner with the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission, MVPC, to guide the process of developing the MVP plan, combined with updating the town's multi-hazard mitigation plan, which was last updated through a regional planning process back in 2016. The process to develop a plan included convening a core team, which included several town officials, including people representing the manager's office, my department, planning, health, conservation, and building, the fire, police, and emergency management departments, elder services, DPW and facilities, schools, the community support coordinator, as well as FONAT and the Ability Assistance Commission. We also then engaged a broader stakeholder group and the community at large to understand public perception of climate hazards through a community survey. And you'll be hearing a little more about the results of that survey once we hand it over to Jennifer. We completed a series of community resiliency building workshops, and we did all of this virtually during COVID-19. The first workshop was broken out over 4 separate days in groups, including the environment, emergency management, health and society, and infrastructure. The goals of these workshop sessions was to identify top climate-related hazards, strengths, and weaknesses pertaining to infrastructure, society, and the environment. The second workshop involved stakeholders adding action items to the community resilience building matrices. So these matrices covered different areas I noted before, identified vulnerabilities and strengths in each area, actions that could be taken, who would be responsible for tracking or carrying out those actions, and prioritizing the actions, including how long it might take to carry the actions out. And then, of course, the plan was drafted based on this process. And I have to thank Jennifer and her team at MVPC. They did such a wonderful job drafting it and running the process. It's very detailed and comprehensive, as you'll see. We held a public listening session in April of this year where we discussed the draft plan and took in feedback. And then, of course, this is the second of 2 public listening sessions. And then hopefully we'll be able to culminate this in a vote to adopt the plan as well. So with that, I'm going to toss it over to Jennifer, and we're going to move it along, and she'll go into a little more in depth about the plan.
Okay, well, thanks. I'm happy to be back. Always interesting to listen about the goings-on in town and the time since I left. But very excited to have also been in part of this process with all of you. The opportunity to update your hazard mitigation plan while doing the municipal vulnerability preparedness plan work was really all about timing. So you just happened to be looking to do this work when the hazard mitigation plan was expiring, and so it's a great opportunity to do the two together, saves time, puts everything in one plan, and it's a more comprehensive document. You weren't the first to do this. The state actually was the first to take climate resiliency and merge it with hazard mitigation in what they refer to as the SHEM cap. It's the State Hazard Mitigation and climate adaptation plan. So you see sort of a representative up there. To do MVP and HMP, as they're called at the same time, there are a few extra steps. You need to involve community members from adjacent communities. You need to update different parts of the plan, the flood insurance information, your repetitive loss structures. There's some more detailed information that goes into the hazard mitigation portion of this plan. So we did all of that work. What you're seeing here is the graphic from the survey that we did for the town and stakeholders and core team. You can see this is their perception of what the biggest climate hazards are in North Andover. Severe winter storms, extreme temperatures, drought, and inland flooding, topping off the list, followed close behind by hurricanes and tropical storms, which we sort of wrapped all into a severe winter storms and nor'easters category. These are some of the most frequent hazards in Massachusetts. And as we've seen a lot recently, climate change is increasing their intensity and frequency. They can cause major infrastructure disruptions, which the town is very familiar with from some of the winter snowstorms and windstorms that we've talked about tonight. High also on the list was extreme temperatures. 2020 tied for one of the warmest years on records. You heard some talk tonight about heat islands. Mature trees help cool the environment. That is very, very true. But we can expect a lot more of these extreme temperatures, these 90-plus days. We're already experiencing an average of 10. By 2050, it could be as many as 30. So more than doubling the number of 90-degree days we see. And higher temperatures obviously have impacts on air quality and health, people with allergies, people with asthma. So these are important things to consider. Inland flooding, North Andover's no stranger to the Mother's Day storm and all the things that brought. We are seeing an increase in the precipitation, not just in the number of precipitation events, but the amount of precipitation that falls in those events. And then lastly, drought, warmer temperatures, less rain, although it hasn't been the case this summer. But again, it's going to be a mix of things that we see, and it's more about the frequency and intensity of these kinds of things that matter. So the town was great in sort of choosing right on target with some of the things we're seeing in the environment today. So part of the core team getting together, they talked about first the vulnerabilities in town. In light of these climate hazards, what in North Andover is vulnerable? And you can see a list. The right is sort of the brainstorming session where people type things into their computers. The things that concern people most, it's called a word cloud, appeared bigger on the screen. Fun exercise, kept everybody very engaged. We had great participation. But you can see some of the vulnerabilities up here, things like culverts, drinking water supply, dams in the infrastructure, our societal section, things like the seniors, homebound, language barriers, need for cooling centers, availability of fresh food, all things discussed by the stakeholders in these sessions. And on the environmental end, water supply, water quality, unprotected farmland. Obviously, that unprotected lands can be developed and turned into impervious area, which can increase flooding and all the sorts of other things we're talking about climate related. And big in town, not to be forgotten, beaver management. That was for the DPW folks back there. Not to be all negative, community strengths and assets. North Andover has many. The plan includes lots of information about the good things the town has done over the past 5 years since the hazard mitigation plan was last updated. Lots of sewer and water infrastructure, obviously gas infrastructure upgrades. The town has fantastic societal programs in its Smart 911, its collaborations with other communities. And as far as the environment, the town's doing lots of work to protect the watershed. And you have lots of other good things going on, like prescribed burns on some of the conservation properties. And then this is the part that occurred in more one-on-one sessions with the stakeholder group and the core team. It's the priority actions to address the vulnerabilities that were brought to light during those group meetings. Things like procuring funding for shoreline erosion projects on Lake Kachikowick, increasing coverage for Wi-Fi, the town's ability to address downed trees during storms, on the society end, making sure plans were available in multiple languages, increasing the use and accessibility of the town's Smart 1-1 system, and on the environmental end, actions to protect the drinking water, beaver management, and increasing green infrastructure, which is stormwater infrastructure that doesn't involve lots of grates and pipes, but more infiltration into natural soils. So those are some of the high action items, and these are the things that the town, if you should choose to apply to the MVP program for grants, it's these priority actions that you've identified as the things you would want to fund. And that brings us to the crescendo here, which is the money that comes along with being a designated municipal vulnerability preparedness community. There are grants every year called action grants. They're competitive. They come out in the spring. They can be up to $2 million for big projects, and regional projects can get up to $5 million. So if you partner with another community potentially on a project, you can receive more funding. If you go to the site, all of these links within this story map, if you access it on your own computer, you can click on them and go to the pages. We'll tell you more about projects that have been funded, and the program is really great. The staff at MVP will work with you to craft a really good project and increase your chances of funding. On the hazard mitigation side, those grants are coming open in November, I believe. There's already a lot of pre-RFR activity out there on what's called BRIC grants, or Building Resilient Infrastructure Communities. So if you're interested in those, North Andover would be eligible to apply this year. And then just a quick plug for regional projects. I work for a regional planning agency. We talked about how there's more funding available for regional projects, but MVPC has built out the story map so that you can access not only what your community has, so these little dots on the map are the results of your MVP program, but we've put that online for all of the communities in the Merrimack Valley, so you can kind of look around and see what other people have identified. The MVP website also has everyone's plan there, and I'm happy to say, I think at this point, every community in the Merrimack Valley has gone through the MVP program, so we're on the ball.
What about projects such as the GLSD? Because we have been having some overflow issues. Would that be something?
Yeah, so for CSOs, is that what you're referring to?
Combined sewer overflows.
Combined sewer overflows. I think that's probably more in line with things, I mean, those infrastructure problems are probably more than could be funded by the MVP program. I'm not sure if the Building Resilient Infrastructures program, which is FEMA funded, might be the better place. And obviously, there's been a lot of discussion in the state's own infrastructure bill about addressing CSOs or combined sewer overflows.
And Jennifer, if I'm not mistaken, the actions that can be taken that can be funded by grants, they usually need to be, they're not hard infrastructure solutions, they're more natural infrastructure solutions.
Yeah, so I would say along the lines of CSOs, sometimes a lot of times decreasing the amount of stormwater that goes into the system can decrease the likelihood of a CSO. Yeah. And so a lot of communities that have CSO problems look to installing more green infrastructure in their stormwater so that the stormwater isn't going into those same pipes that then cause the sewage overflows. So that kind of project is something that likely could be funded through MVP.
Through your program. Well, that's good to know, because we are getting notified a lot more frequently.
Yeah, this summer has been.
It was wet in July.
Yep.
Especially on the weekends.
I know, unfortunately. But great question. Thank you. All right.
Okay, and I think I'm going to take it home from here. And I just want to thank Jennifer and MVPC again. They did a great job with this whole process. And just for the folks here in the room and at home, you can access all of this information. This story map is linked The plan itself, all the information about the past listening sessions, we have a recorded listening session that's up on the town's website. If you go to northandoverma.gov, you go to the Community Development Department page, there's a link on the left side to the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Planning information, and all of the information is housed there. So it's all archived, it's all available for the public. And in terms of next steps, we're going to be wanting to continue to have the core group meet on a regular basis to discuss the plan, to discuss the actions that are coming out of this, to discuss next steps in terms of funding some of the strategies and priorities that are identified in the planning process, and deciding how and when we want to apply for the grants that are available. And we do need to report annually to the state on our progress in order to stay certified as an MVP community. And so that's really about it. We're just going to, try to implement these priorities through grant funding and other means. And as far as tonight, we are asking that part of this process be to obviously answer any questions you might have, but also to have you vote to formally adopt the plan. And I believe there was some language for adoption included in your packets.
You're always welcome back, especially if you're bringing money.
Our region has been quite blessed by the MVP program. Again, the story map has links to it, but communities all around us are being funded. Andover received funding for a big flood study, Haverhill for a dam removal, Groveland for a flood study, Salisbury previously for Rings Island, Newburyport for Plum Island. So the funding comes to this region if you have a good application. So I'd encourage the town to apply.
And there are a lot of consultants that do this planning work, but it was a very easy decision to go with MVPC and Jennifer because of the institutional knowledge that she brings to the table in this process, and obviously the knowledge that the Planning Commission brings to the table, just understanding sort of the regional implications of all the issues going on in the area. So
I was thankful I worked with an organization that could do all this IT work remotely once we switched. And thank you to the town, because this was the hardest part, was having this whole plan ready to go, and then boop, we were starting over at square one. So it took a while, but we made it.
Thank you.
And it is a public listening session. I don't know if there is an opportunity to ask if the public has any questions, but I just wanted to throw it out there.
If there's anyone, any questions?
Even town employees.
No.
Seeing how you're here.
They don't want to talk to us anymore.
They already had their say.
But I think this also ties into this is another way we facilitate the implementation of the master plan, right? This is, everything's all connected, and these are the sort of things that, in and of itself may not accomplish a check mark in the master plan, but it helps us move more efficiently or make better decisions of the process. And again, Andrew, you've just been, just the man on the ball with this, and this is what creates power and momentum with implementing master plans. This is how it really works. It's not just kind of budget and figuring out where to spend money. It's this sort of geeky stuff sometimes, but it's like really, really critical and cool. Right.
All these little things, right, add up to big things, and we're able to apply for more money for different projects and move things forward, which I think, and you have been so successful at writing grants and all of that, so we appreciate it, all your hard work.
I echo that. Thank you for your hard work on this, and I love that every time you talk to us, you've created more opportunities for us to get money, so come see us anytime.
It's all been said, so thank you.
So I'll move that the Select Board adopt the Multi-Hazard Mitigation and Vulnerability Plan 2021 as presented.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent.
All right.
Madam Chair, I believe many in the room are here on the Beacon Hill Boulevard sign, so could we take item I out of order?
Okay, thank you.
Me to it.
Thank you.
All right, good. Yes, if everybody is in agreement, if we could take oh, where is it? The do not enter signs on Beacon Hill and Bay State Road, out of order.
Sure.
So I believe that these are two connection roads between 125 and Osgood, and they are proposing to put do not enter signs and a right turn only signs on the 125 side. So
Can I ask questions, or
yeah, I didn't know if, would you like to present, or DPW, I didn't know if John would like to talk to it?
Good evening. John Bergese, Assistant Director, Public Works, Town Engineer, Jim Stanford, Director of Public Works. So we're here tonight to request approval from the Select Board to install 2 do not enter, right arrow, and no left turn signs at the intersections of Beacon Hill Boulevard and Bay State Road with Route 125 Chickering Road. Over the years, DPW has had discussions with the nearby abutters concerning excessive cut-through traffic on both roads, Beacon Hill Boulevard and Bay State Road, caused by their proximity to the schools with the pickup and the drop-offs, and their connection from Osgood Street to Route 125. The DPW has recently been working with our consultants, the abutters, the town manager's office, the school department, the North Andover Police Department, and the Mass DOT on designing a new crosswalk across Route 125 at the intersection of Beacon Hill Boulevard. As part of the design for the safety of the pedestrians crossing Beacon Hill Boulevard and Route 125, with the cars entering Beacon Hill Boulevard from Route 125, we examined that during the design. To accommodate the new crosswalk and enhance the safety for the pedestrians, along with minimizing the potential conflicts with vehicular traffic, the design group agreed that the addition of the do not enter, right arrow, and no left turn signs was necessary. By installing these signs, it will not only increase the safety, but it will also minimize that vehicular and pedestrian conflict and reduce the excessive cut-through traffic. These signs were included as part of the Mass DOT permit application that has been approved, and we're now requesting approval from the Select Board.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
I'll open it up to questions.
I have so many questions. Where do you anticipate, well, first of all, were there any traffic studies done or anything similar to indicate that this is needed in this area? So is there an increase in accidents? Is there, like, typically when we make these kinds of changes, it's because there is a,
Sure.
proven reason for it.
So there weren't any traffic studies done by our consultants. It all stemmed from essentially the installation or proposed installation of this new crosswalk. So when looking at that and the fact that, now we have the sidewalk that goes all the way through the Kittredge School, exits right onto Beacon Hill Boulevard, and based on discussions with the police department and what they've seen, because they've actually been out there in the mornings at drop-off and whatnot, compiled together with input from Jim Mealy at the school department, it was kind of, they had all indicated, they're all for this crosswalk, but again, their major concern was the amount of traffic coming from Route 125 heading down Beacon Hill Boulevard. Discussions were also had, okay, so maybe we just do it on Beacon Hill Boulevard, recognizing if we do that, it is just going to shift all the traffic to Bay State Road, which that's the reason we have Bay State Road included. There is a crosswalk there now that the Mass DOT built the sidewalk, which is great, the connectivity. So there are crossings there also. So looking at that, we acknowledged, and that's why we have both roads where we're proposing this, because we didn't want to just shift, traffic from Beacon Hill Boulevard to Bay State. Lastly, of course, the intersection is now completed at Mass Ave and Route 125, fully signalized with that left turn. So we actually waited till that construction was completed before we move forward with this proposal.
I think the intersection's fabulous. What do you expect sort of the traffic flow to be? I mean, I use that area daily, so we're now all moving up to Mass Ave, right? And then you're taking a left on Mass Ave. I don't know how many times you've done this, but the left from Mass Ave to Osgood is a very awkward turn.
Yeah.
So how do you anticipate?
Right. So we do acknowledge that turn is more awkward, but the other thing it is that it's a control.
It's signaled,
It's
yeah,
controlled,
but those
so-
lights are a little wacky.
Well, the one at Osgood, obviously the new intersection works
It's
outstanding.
amazing. It's amazing,
You
yeah.
know, so that's what actually, safety-wise, that's what makes the difference, you know, especially when you're talking about the conflicts between the vehicles and the pedestrians, is you want it to happen at a controlled intersection and not essentially a non-controlled mid-road type turn, especially given the amount, you know, the where you have Beacon Hill Boulevard coming out and you also have the exit from the schools, like that it's a really quick maneuver type deal that has to happen. So with that, moving it up, you know, is gonna definitely help with traffic flow there. I do acknowledge, you know, the intersection at Osgood and Mass Ave, it is, I've done that multiple times myself to get back to the office. It is a little more awkward, but again, the difference is there is a light there, so it is more controlled.
Do you expect, I mean, if there's so much increased traffic on those two streets, you're now just displacing that traffic further up the road. So how do you anticipate accounting for those changes during a very traffic time of day everywhere?
Yeah. So, you know, one of the things we did discuss with the consultant that we kind of all threw around is, you know, we looked at, granted, when they were doing the Fields project, and I know that's being held up, we started examining, okay, what are the potential outcomes if we do this, if we do that? So that was one of them. You know, when we started down the path with the Fields project, it's, okay, if we put the do not enters there, where's it gonna go? So that was started to be evaluated, and again, with the new intersection at Mass Ave and 125, you know, they looked at that intersection, recognizing the Fields project, and that will accommodate. I do understand Osgood and Mass Ave, with that being more, you know, that intersection, you know, is gonna have more left turns with this. But at the end of the day, it's the safety for the pedestrians and why we really need that to be at a more controlled location.
I just have a question on the crosswalk. I'm sorry, Jay.
Nope,
Okay. On the crosswalk, what kind of signaling we're going to have on the crosswalk? I mean, that's a really busy stretch of roadway there.
Yeah.
How are we getting people safely across there?
So what we're actually doing is we proposed right at the crosswalk, we're going to have the rapid rectangular flashing beacons. So you essentially hit it and it flashes and tells you to wait before you proceed, making sure you can proceed. And then we went even further and we're creating a school zone. So similar to Mass Ave, that portion of 125, now the Mass DOT approved our request to make that a 20-mile-an-hour zone during school hours. It's going to be the same as what's on Mass Ave, which I think is 7 to 9 and 2 to 3. So between those hours, it's a 20-mile-an-hour zone through there. So combination of the 20-mile-an-hour zone and the RRFBs, as they call them, for the crosswalk is what we proposed.
One of the reasons why we fought for that crosswalk was because it was put in temporarily during the 125 construction and then just kind of removed suddenly. But people in the neighborhood had gotten very used to crossing there. And so it became a dangerous situation because people continued to cross. It's the path of least resistance. So we were really excited to be able to get that crosswalk back in.
And I would add, Jim just mentioned, that is actually the same that was installed as part of the Mass DOT project at Adams Ave along Mass Ave. So it's the same exact kind of setup that you have there, is what we would have on 125 now.
Gotcha. Okay, great.
So,
Just another question. I think there was a suggestion earlier from one of the residents about putting in do not enter during certain times. Was any thought given to that? I mean,
So-
this makes an enforcement issue.
Exactly, that's exactly it. When we discussed that, you know, the police chief essentially said, and I forget his exact words, but it
I can imagine.
It's essentially, it was, you know, he didn't recommend that we put it in specific time frame on the do not enters. was his.
Anything that adds confusion, driver confusion, it just opens it up to the opportunity for people to go outside of those.
So in that regard, doesn't it make more sense to just make it one way? It doesn't make, like, just go for it and make it one way. What would be the drawback to that? Because to me, it's actually still confusing if you're looking down that street and seeing cars going both directions. You know, I see that there's room there for that to be problematic. So
It's a good point. It's a very good point. In fact, if you don't mind,
No, go right ahead.
we actually had public meetings, informational meetings. We love to have those, as talked about earlier. I think it was when, a few years back, Dee, I think, was acting at the time, where we asked all the residents from those two streets to come in and give us ideas. I mean, we don't know everything, and they're there. And that was brought up. A couple other ideas, closing off the street altogether. They're two very unique streets. I think they're the only two with direct cut-through access other than the collector and major roads off of Chickering Road in that regard. So it was discussed. I think we can't make everybody, we can't solve everything, and it's always competing interests like we talked about earlier. And there seem to be just as many downsides to doing that. And I don't want to say that do not enter is a compromise, but I think it was one of those things that we thought it was the best based on all the input.
So one recommendation that I would make, because obviously, you know, when we make a change like this, sometimes the best laid plans can be impactful in ways we don't realize. And so one thing that we may want to consider is we do this as kind of a pilot. We come back and report to you in a quarter and let you know, one, it worked really well. We'll know pretty quickly it worked really well, or it did not work well. And if it worked really poorly, we'd come back to you much faster than that. But a lot of the time that helps because it does take a little while for people to get used to a new sign, obviously. But that gives us a chance to come back, report on you, and the neighbors can come back and say, hey, this didn't work because this, or this was great because that. I've had occasion to meet with a lot of the residents on some of those streets, you know, early in the morning during drop-off, seen some of their lawns that people have driven right over, and it certainly is problematic, particularly for the people at the top of that street.
I think it's just hard to make such a big change like that and think that there's no way back from it. So, and I think broadening the net to talk to people a little further out than those two streets is probably a good idea.
It never hurts to be able to come back and do an analysis of what went right and what went wrong.
A trial is not a bad thing.
Just for clarification, well, the sidewalk, obviously there'll be crosswalks across Bay Street and across Beacon Hill Boulevard. Where is the crosswalk that goes across 125?
It's at Beacon Hill Boulevard.
Right at, which, like north or south of?
Not the Kittredge School side, the opposite side.
Okay. Okay.
Yep, which was actually, it's the same exact location where the temporary crosswalk was that the Mass DOT had. So it's going in exactly the same spot.
And then, and then pedestrians can get into like the ABCC
Exactly.
from there.
Yep,
Okay.
yep, because there's sidewalk right in.
And then another point of clarification, when the Fields project goes forward,
yes,
the light will be revisited or will be put in?
It'll be revisited. So at that time, and I wasn't here, but my understanding is from reading the reports is that basically the traffic counts did not support a light at that point, but the thought was that it would be supported when we had the traffic counts for the rec complex. So obviously we'd have to go back and redo the traffic study.
Okay. And my thought looking, and honestly, I'm a walker. My kids are walkers, so this doesn't really impact me, and it probably never will, but it seems odd to me that the exit from the middle school and ABECC is preventing that left-hand turn. I know that it's a difficult left-hand turn, but now you're forcing this traffic all the way around. So I don't know how we
So
that
obviously
up again.
the driveway was designed to have a signal.
Yeah.
That's why
Okay.
it was built wide enough so that you
Okay.
will, once the signal goes in, you can have fully actuated right turn, left turn out of the ECC.
Okay.
We, in talking with the police and the school department, they didn't want to open that option up without the controlled signal to allow that. So that's why that's corded off
Like
the
that.
way it is. And
But we're
it's-
not guaranteed a signal, correct?
We're not guaranteed.
Okay.
No, we would still need to apply,
Okay.
to the Mass DOT for approval, and it's, like Melissa mentioned, need to
Yeah.
have the adequate traffic counts to show the need for an additional signal at that location.
I would imagine if I lived like up near Butcher Boy, I would be frustrated on that exit.
And it has been this way for a long time,
Mhm.
based on discussions with Jim Mealy, meaning the right turnout. Granted, I acknowledge that you can cut down Beacon Hill Boulevard and Bay State, to make that maneuver. Jim Mealy also indicated it does back up quite a bit, doing those maneuvers with the people coming out of the schools. So I would mention that, again, I know it's been this traffic pattern for quite a while, so.
I think that if we can approve it with review in a few months, I think that would be helpful to everybody. Yeah, go ahead. That's okay. You have to go to the mic and.
You're saying about
I'm sorry, for the record, you have.
Elise Edson, and I'm of 220 Osgood Street too. I agree with what you're saying, about doing it as a pilot program, but I think Janice just brought up a good point that I didn't think of before, which was the taking that left from Mass Ave onto Osgood Street, because there is no left arrow signal to do that like there is on Mass Ave. So I think that would really back that traffic up. Down Mass Ave more, and then the other thing is the school buses in the morning, so they all cut down Bay State Road, and that's really the only traffic that I've seen. It doesn't, I haven't seen much other traffic, but I think sending all those buses around would also make a lot more traffic on, Chickering in the morning as well, so since they can't get to the middle school basically from going through that street. So just something to consider.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Hi, I'm Tom Duggan. I live at Beacon Hill Boulevard, and I'm actually a direct abutter. So a lot tonight I saw conversations, especially about the trees, with the partnership between residents and members of the town government. And I would say this is a good example of that. I know that Town Manager Rodriguez has been out, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 times with us, and I think the DPW has been out there 3 or 4 times. Chief Gray, Officer Wilson have been out there to meet with people on Bay State and Beacon Hill Boulevard, and Jim Mealy and Dr. Gilligan have also been huge partners. And this is fundamentally a safety project. This really cropped up after the development of the Brad Street School and the traffic patterns that were there, and the inability to have those signalized intersections out there that dramatically increased traffic coming down Beacon Hill and Bay State Boulevard. Right now you have basically people coming out of that exit trying to make that hard left maneuver, which is then backing up traffic all the way down 125, backing up traffic into the school system. You talk about safety, there's people who are trying to cross with children, and as the town manager said, I was actually the one who had to call the town hall and the school department, because I looked out my window. One of the benefits of working remotely is you see a lot more of what's going on in your neighborhood. Mass Highway crew out stripping up sidewalk and hadn't told anyone, and that sidewalk had become a induced path of travel for adults and children to go up and down that corridor. And in fact, the current design of 125, the bike route stops right at Beacon Hill Boulevard, and there's actually no safe crossing if you're a bicyclist to get across the road to continue down the far side on a sidewalk and things like that. So a lot of what the neighborhood has talked about was the fact that there is a lot of high-speed traffic going down. To your question about traffic studies, formal traffic studies were not done, but formal traffic studies also have not been done for the Fields project. But Officer Wilson did do a lot of traffic counts out there, speed counts. There's been a lot of enforcement by Chief Gray and a lot of looking at this to make this a much more safer point. And as you know, I come from a traffic management and traffic transportation background, anytime that you can route traffic to a signalized intersection, that is a much safer benefit to the public versus what you're having now, which is a kind of hard left down two side streets. And in regards to the buses, I don't know, you didn't mention this, Jim, but I think Dr. Mealy has agreed that the buses are now going to use the signalized intersection because it's actually safer for them as well. So instead of them trying to cut down Bay State, because they actually can't make the turn onto Beacon, they're going to take that turn on Mass Ave, go down, and then funnel their way back using signalized intersections, which makes it safer for them and the rest of the public. So to the point earlier about partnership, this is one of those things where we've had a good working relationship with many people in the neighborhood, working with the public hearings. I think this started, 3 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and then over the past several years, a lot of field visits, and certainly if there's a conditional, look at it 6 months from now to see, have we improved traffic? Have we improved, the ability to cross? I know for me as a person, I had 4 cars in front of my house today, people parking on the street and walking their children across Mass Ave to get to the ABEC with no signalized intersection. And meanwhile, cars are flying down our road, taking left and rights at high rates of speed. That's just not safe. So temporary, if it's 6-month pilot, to put those do not enters there and to stop the left turns, I think that would be a great benefit not only to the neighborhoods on that side of the corridor, but also will hopefully improve traffic flow, because I think, Jim, you also mentioned in one of the public hearings, all the lights are going to be synchronized, right, between Sal's, the crosswalk, Mass Ave, and I think further going up all the way to the Mickey D's, McDonald's maybe? No? Or was that something else? I don't remember. But I remember in the conversations there was going to be that synchronization of the signals so that if you are at Butcher Boy, hopefully the traffic you're experiencing won't be because of the signals being out of sync, but it'll just be the high volume through the road. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight, and thank you for the presentation. I will entertain a motion with a condition for review.
I'll make a motion that we approve this plan with condition to review in 6 months to see if there were, what the consequences were, the improvements that it helps with.
And, yeah, I think we need to look at 125 and that intersection at the common. Yeah.
So I'll second that with a question. So when would this begin? When would what would be the time frame to getting those signs up and all these traffic patterns starting?
You have to order the signs.
Yeah, so it was included as part of the Mass DOT project, which I was trying to get done before the roads close on November 15th. We are having trouble actually getting materials. Believe it or not, the bases for those RRFBs are they're like 10 to 12 weeks out, which puts us past November 15th. I believe anything you tell me.
Yep.
So it's going to be part of when we install the crosswalk. So if I can't get the materials, that may get pushed out to the springtime, in which case we would do it at the same time we do that. If not, hopefully it would be before November 15th.
And I would suggest maybe some backpack notes going home with the Brad Street kids, the Eckers kids, middle school kids, all of the all the students in the area, so the parents will know.
And a reminder maybe because it happens on Parker too, like just to avoid the drop-off lines, that, that's not your best option, is to be crossing 125.
Yeah. I know, that makes me think we need a signal.
Right. Yeah. So, Okay, so I have a motion. Second? Okay, everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you again, everybody, for coming, and we will revisit in 6 months. After it's constructed, after it's implemented. Yes. Thank
Madam
you.
Chair, can I take 5 minutes?
Sure.
Somebody else drinking a lot of water over here.
Where's that paper? Oh, we're back again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
you, Jen.
Thank you.
Very well done. We have now cleared.
Everett runs.
I don't think we're ever going to get DPW to come back again.
They're never coming back.
Intermission.
Oh, no.
Yeah, Bill, do you have an intermission song?
I know, I should have eaten. I didn't want to eat at 5:30, but now I want to eat.
Let's move fast on the goals. Or push it to the next meeting.
Because the rest of it's kind of.
Other than it could just be a quick,
Depends.
just gonna be a
Just
quick.
gonna allocate them, that's fine.
I don't know if she's gonna read them all out.
Discuss one, whatever. Those people in the air conditioning's not.
So we're back to E.
We're back to E, okay.
Do we want to kind of?
Do you want me to put this off to the
quickly,
27th?
Or do we want to push it off to the 27th?
We can push it off to the 27th, that's fine. All right, Laura, this is going on the 27th, okay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think
Yeah.
it gives us time to really
No problem.
discuss
We were
more.
talking about it when you left the room, so.
That's fine.
All right, so we will move on to setting the date for the annual town meeting, May 17th, 2022. Is there any discussion?
Here before we know it.
Yes, well.
If not, I'll take a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll move that we set the date for annual town meeting to May 17th, 2022.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we will see everybody May 17th, hopefully. With no COVID cases and indoors, right?
No masks.
Indoors.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
We will move on to appointments. So our subcommittee, you've got two, one for the Council on Aging and one for the Emergency Management, if you'd like to talk to those.
Yes, well, I'll just talk, so Remo Zimbaldi for the Council on Aging. Remo's been a volunteer in the senior center for quite some time. He drives the seniors. He drives one of the buses. So this will, he's got a lot of experience. So this is just really formalizing it and putting him actually on that Council on Aging.
And Daniel Moore, we met with also, he has a strong healthcare business background and had interest in just furthering his service in the town. So it's a great fit for emergency management.
Also a multi-board volunteer. I think he was very active in sports and everything. So yeah, just continuing his volunteer on emergency management.
Madam Town Manager, Tim Willett is replacing
So Tim will be replacing Jim on the Greater Lawrence Sanitary District. Jim has been serving on that for 4 years, but he has requested that Tim take the seat moving forward. Tim has been with the town for 28 years, and he is one of our most knowledgeable people having to do with both sewer and water. I don't want to hear me say that because he would, but Tim, it's true. And so we would like to have him serve as representative moving forward.
Awesome. I agree with his knowledge on water and sewer.
He's fabulous.
He knows.
Okay, so our town doesn't run without volunteers, so we appreciate everybody's volunteering to service, for their service. And I will take a motion for those 3 appointments.
I'll move that the Select Board appoint Remo Zabaldi to the Council on Aging through June 30th, 2024, Daniel Moore to the Emergency Management through June 30th, 2022, and Tim Willett to the Greater Lawrence Sanitary District Board of Commissioners through June 30th, 2024.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you to everybody for your work on interviewing and for the people willing to volunteer. And then I guess I will take a motion to move into licensing.
Motion we move into licensing.
Second. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Over to you.
There we go.
Mr. Chair.
So our first is change of manager at the Stevens Estate. And this is a next step as we make
This
this.
is a very short change. This is only for a very short term. So, as you know, Humara took Joanna's position as the director.
Right.
She'll be doing that for the next 33 days. But we wanted to make sure that all the paperwork is in order, since she is currently the manager of the license. So this is bringing Humara as the manager, and then you'll be seeing a subsequent application coming from Fireside.
Great. Any questions or concerns from the board?
I move that the select board, acting as licensing commissioners, approve the change of manager for the Stevens estate.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so congratulations. One step further down the road. One step closer. Great. Next is an application from An Lee of Love Green LLC for common victular and annual entertainment license. And again, we've got all the paperwork in our package. It's all signed off by the departments with no issues. And this is for business licensed on Turnpike Street. Any questions? Concerns?
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Passes 5-0. Next is application from Paul Gallant on behalf of Merrimack College for a one-day wine and malt liquor license from 5 to 8 p.m. for a block party to be held at 315 Turnpike Street, Lot H, on September 17th, 2021. And it just kind of a refresher to folks. We licensed a couple of years ago in kind of organizing things, specific locations at Merrimack College, trying to control and drive those events there. If they wanted to go outside of those locations, then they had to apply for a one-day license. So that's why this is up in front of us, in case folks wondered. No, it's fair enough. And again, they've got part of that is laying out, more than just kind of a scrawled picture, how it's laying out, what the entrance is, access, all that sort of thing. And so we have a lot more detail than we normally, or than we used to have with it, just kind of by way of reference. There's nobody here from Merrimack to speak to it, so.
Well, you did a good job.
Those are the mechanics of it. And I'm the neighbor, so I'll keep an ear for it, for sure.
You got a stake in it. Mr. Chair, I'll move approval.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have applications from Teresa Dunphy of Smolak Farms for 4 one-day wine and malt liquor licenses and a waiver of police detail for all 4 events for the Fall Festival held at the event tent behind the farm stand on September 18th, 19th, 25th, and 26th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And I know she was not able to come to speak to us, but
So I don't think Tricia was here. I know earlier in the meeting Deb was actually here.
That's right.
Yeah. But this application is in order, and there was no concerns with it. They are currently going through the process, like I said, of trying to get a catering license, but it's a long process.
yeah. Any on the waiver for the details?
Yeah, I spoke with both the chief and Lieutenant Lannon, and they were comfortable with waiving the details for the time being, noting that the catering license is coming forward. So that's where we stood.
Yeah.
Do they normally, with the fall festival and so much activity, do they have one normally?
They often have a police detail for traffic purposes.
Okay, but that would be separate,
But that's
right?
separate from
Okay, so
this,
like
right.
Smolak would
Yeah.
request a traffic detail.
Yes.
But that is not tied to the liquor.
Not tied to the
Okay.
liquor, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get
But
it.
they usually do, for the fall festival and most of the apple picking season,
They have a
a
traffic detail.
detail.
Okay.
It's also during daylight hours too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets so many, there's so many people.
So
It's always amazing.
I move that the Select Board, acting as licensing commissioners, approve the application from Tricia Dunphy of Smolak Farms for 4 one-day wine and malt liquor licenses for the Fall Festival held on the festival tent behind the farm stand on September 18, 19, 25th, and 26th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And further move to waive the police detail for all of it.
I'll second that.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes, unanimously. Great. And the last is application from Deborah Ingalls of Butlers and Bars for 3 one-day liquor licenses for events in the large event tent and request a waiver of police details for September 18th, 19th, and wedding reception on October 7th, which is an employee appreciation dinner. I know in our packet here that Officer Lannon did request or did ask for a requirement of a police detail for the 18th. And the 18th is, which event is that?
That's a wedding.
That's a wedding. Yeah, wedding reception, 125 guests. Any thoughts about that?
The 19th is also a wedding, right?
It is.
But,
During the day,
But it's-
yeah, well, this is the only one that Officer Lannon makes a specific note to. Are you aware?
So him and
Town
I may
manager?
have talked after he made this note, but if he put it in here, then I would go with his recommendation.
I agree.
Yeah.
I would make a motion that we approve the 3 one-day wine and malt licenses and waive the police details for the 2 with the exception of September 18th wedding.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, passes unanimously. Thank you for the help, Town Manager. And motion to move out of licensing.
I move to close the meeting of the North Andover Licensing Commission.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Over to you, Madam Chair.
Let's see, let's move on to our consent items. We are accepting a Green Communities grant in the amount of $192,589, which is to do some, I believe, LED light upgrades to many of the schools into the DPW. Is it DPW too? We'll be surplusing a vehicle for the police department. We're accepting donations to the Stevens Memorial Library, surplusing some property with the fire department, the affordable unit resale at 106 Cortland Drive and 30 Cypress Way, and the surplus property at the Stevens Estate. I'd also like to thank all of those that made donations to the library. Michael Glennon, Brittany Forgas, Alice Pahigan, Brenda Murphy, Akito Minataka, Peter and Diane LaFond, Helen Condra, and we also have an anonymous donation. So we are very grateful to your donations, and they will be much appreciated at the Stevens Library. Is there any discussion or comments on the consent items?
I move that the select board approve and accept all consent items.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Alrighty. And we have approval of our minutes. Open session August 9th and open session August 30th, 2021. And I'll take a motion to approve those unless there's any comments or corrections.
I'll move the select board approve the the open session minutes of the August 9th, 2021 and August 30th, 2021 as written.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Just,
Thank you.
were those the right dates? I have
I know,
swaps
because
on mine.
I was gonna,
I'm getting cross-eyed looking at this.
it actually was, I think, a mistake on
The 30th was our goals meeting.
Yes.
And then I think we met on
it
the
says
9th.
open session minutes July 12th.
Oh, I have the 9th.
It's August 9th.
I have the
Yeah,
9th
the
and the 30th.
A little confusion in the packet, it's July 12th on the agenda.
Oh,
Yeah, right,
okay.
But in the
Okay.
motion book, it's August 9th.
Okay.
Oh, but it should be.
So I think it
So
was
we're
August
covered.
9th, right?
Yeah, you're good.
That would seem to make sense.
Yep. The last agenda has the 9th and the 30th.
So I think
So we're good.
we're good.
Okay.
Double check it.
Okay, so we have no old business. Anything from the town manager?
We covered most of it, but just really quickly, we've been working with the festival committee, Jeff Coco, and with Selectwoman Ms. Mediali on the 375th, getting banners ready, working with smaller farms on perhaps hosting an event there. We have, I'm sure, as the Selectwoman will tell you, decided to postpone the gala to later in the year. We're working with Sarah on creating a website so people will know what's going on for the 375th. I think the library is going to be getting involved, so we've got a lot of stuff happening with that, which is all fun stuff to be working on after coming out of and still dealing with the pandemic. So we're excited to be bringing that forward. So
Yeah, there's that and lots of other ideas that we're still trying to put together to make it a really good happy birthday, North Andover.
Are we bringing the schools in?
Oh, yes, actually, Mr. Duggan, who was here earlier, is at the suggestion of the town manager, and he seemed very excited about it, of doing an online time capsule, and including the children and people from town who have great pictures or great stories. But that will be ongoing. It's, it's not like just a short period of time, and then perhaps even displaying those at the Historical Society in their new little theater. So we're working on a lot of fun things. We did get kind of set back a little bit with the COVID, and the gala is now scheduled for May 13th, a Friday night. So, and we are working on fireworks and all kinds of other fun things, and tying some of our regular festivities like the Santa Parade with a nod to Happy Birthday North Andover in celebration, because there's just not enough time to raise enough money for 2 parades and 2 sets of fireworks and things. So we're trying to tie it together and do a nod to our anniversary. But so the banners are being ordered, and we're looking forward to have it that go public really soon, so people can order. You can personalize them, and we are also looking to put a wreath at the holidays below the banner. So it's so we're hoping that we will bring on the spirit of the 375th and have everyone have some fun with it.
Very exciting. It's nice to be planning fun stuff, right?
Well,
Stuff to look
that's
forward
part
to.
of it. We just have been so kind of held down that we're really looking forward to trying to make this a great celebration for the town. We are the original settlement, so couldn't help it, the North Andover girl and Dickie and others, but it's true, we are the original settlement, and we hope we have a banner that people will appreciate. It kind of harkens back to 1646 with some of the colors that we chose, sort of Americana colors, but we also have a nice picture of our town seal, which also speaks to the town and its great desire for environmental. We've preserved and spent a lot of money preserving all that land around the lake, and that's kind of the center of what we like to think as it started way back when, and we are still people that the environment is important to in preserving our open space. So that's that. And those will be $125, a little more than just the wreaths, but it will include the wreaths, and you can personalize the banner and keep it when we're done, which we were hoping to keep it up for just about the full year of the celebration until it's time to put up the banners for the farmers market. So, because the celebration officially should have started in May, because that was the official date. So we hope to have them up till May. And just
Can I
remind.
just give a quick shout out to the Fall Festival that's happening this weekend at North Andover Common. So I hope everybody will go out and enjoy the beautiful weather and support our vendors and our merchants. And yeah.
What time is that? 10?
10.
Thought it was 10.
I don't know when it ends. Probably 4 or 5.
As long as we know when it starts.
Pretty much all. Just need to know when it starts. But if you want to help out, show up at 8.
It's always a great event.
And how many more weeks of the farmers market?
We are done October 3rd.
Okay,
So we have a few more weeks of farmers markets. We had a fabulous week this week. So yes, get out there.
Any other updates? No? No? Okay, our next meeting is September 27th, and I will take a motion to adjourn our meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank
All right.
you.